Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Town of Camden Select Board meeting from November 19th, 2019. Just as a reminder for anybody in the audience, this meeting is recorded and broadcast. Into our agenda as usual, we'll start with if anybody has any public input on non-agenda items. I see any hands? I don't see any hands, so we're going to skip that, go directly to select board reports. Mark, would you like to start?
Sure, I'll start. Had a great Energy Committee meeting last night. They're very committed to, getting us caught up to speed with the Global Covenant of Mayors stats and work that needs to be done. The Watershed School will start in January. We'll start to work on the next round of what needs to happen. And so there's a lot of good energy coming out there. They're also interested in, as we have heating issues going on, also interested in solar, streetlights, Camden efficiency, something we're working on. A lot of good work being done by the Energy Committee, which I'm excited about. The main thing I want to talk about tonight, there's been, and Allison may join in at some point, there's been a lot of discussion. There was an editorial in Village Soup about the Montgomery Dam and the situation with that. And from my perspective, I wanted to make it clear what I look at the issue is all about. It's not about the water or things coming in from the ocean. It's about what happens when we have huge rain impact and it's coming from on land. And the best comparison I can make is in 2011, Hurricane Irene was headed towards Maine and veered off towards the west and hit Vermont. And they had up to 11 inches of rain. And the stats there, 6 people were killed, 200 bridges and 500 miles of road were either damaged or destroyed. Out of 251 towns in Vermont, 225 had infrastructure damage. And the problem is the Montgomery Dam helps contribute to our downtown being a flood zone. And if we leave it the way it is without examining other options, then if we have that kind of rain impact, and think about when you look at the hurricanes that have hit Florida and Houston and all those instances, it's not the wind and the ocean, it's the rain events that are the problem. If we have that kind of rain load come downtown, it would hugely impact our downtown, all the buildings on both sides of Route 1 and all the buildings along the Mogunticook River. That, for me, is the concern about the Montgomery Dam. And I just wanted to make it clear what we're talking about here. It's a safety issue, it's a flood issue, and that's what this is about, and at least for me. So I wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Mark. On to the other side to Taylor.
Pass.
On to Ms. Allison.
Well, maybe you could stall for a moment here
Okay,
while
I think
have anything to report?
we will break into song for 3 minutes.
Well, what about it?
No,
Do
what?
you have something?
Well, just very much.
To go
Well,
last?
I can speak some more, of
Or
course.
Audra, just-
Oh, yeah,
I mean, if
Audra.
I'm really holding it
I
up.
think,
I'll
no,
just-
that's all right, Allison. Audra, go ahead.
I'm guessing Allison would say anything any updates that I had, and I don't
You
want
should
to.
say it.
Do you want me to make the announcement?
I think you should.
I
Okay.
think so, too.
Well, yesterday, we were informed that the town of Camden will be receiving a $139,000 grant to study flood resiliency for the Mogunticook watershed. So it'll include looking at not just the Montgomery Dam, but all of the other dams up to the Mogunticook River, as well as wetland restoration feasibility. And I think the focus will be for that, particularly around the Knowlton Street Dam impoundment area. So it's a big project. It's really exciting. A lot of hard work went into it. Allison did a great job in getting the grant together. We had a lot of support from Interfluve. So it's very exciting. This is our second time applying for it. And we've been asked the question a lot about why are you just looking at the Montgomery Dam? And the answer is we are not. We're looking at the entire watershed. And this grant is going to allow us to move forward with that feasibility planning for the entire watershed. So it's a
Nice chunk of money.
big chunk of money.
Wow. So congratulations to both of you for the hard work you put into writing grants. I know it's not always easy. because I'm terrible at it, but you guys do a phenomenal job, and your success rate has just been outstanding.
Well, I mean, a lot of it for this is applying for grants that we're actually a really good fit. And so we're lucky in some ways that we fall into this category of places that are known to be at risk. Because this is a nationally competitive federal grant. There were 179 applications, 44 were chosen. And it's really been just the process of applying for it has forced us to sharpen our knowledge of exactly what is known in terms of what, where our vulnerabilities are for climate change. And it's, when they put this all into their database too, they have all these maps that show that we come up as having all of this area that is a potential resilience hub, high wildlife productivity, and opportunities to have these like big areas of forest that can soak up some of the water that that is known to be is going to be a problem for us. And then also, of course, the vulnerability to rising seas. And so it's like we fall into a category that is has the potential to get huge amounts of funding. I mean, this grant alone has given out like $80 million in 2 years. So, and they really emphasize projects that use natural infrastructure to help solve some of these problems. So, yeah, it's very, very exciting.
And I think a good point with this too is we just won a planning grant, and what they like to do is they like to fund planning grants that are going to lead towards an actual infrastructure project, and they also have a funding program for that as well.
With separate buckets?
Separate buckets of money, and if you've won a planning grant, it puts you in a good track to win an actual,
So,
like,
I would think so.
shovel in the ground,
yeah.
grant to do an infrastructure project.
You're kind of
so.
on the bus.
Yes, so it's very exciting. It's a
That's
great
great.
opportunity for everything that we're talking about in terms of,
Yeah.
flood and climate change resiliency for the McGonagall watershed.
Good news
guys.
coming.
So I'm having trouble getting the projector to work for some reason tonight, which normally doesn't happen. But one of the things that I did over the weekend was go and visit a different river system that we went on a field trip, an adult field trip with, adult plus my 2 kids, to Vassalboro. And the organization Main Rivers did a field trip showing the work that they've done on the China Lake outlet stream.
Oh, yeah.
So that's been about 5 to 10 years of work and planning, and we visited 6 different dam sites. 2 of those dams had been removed. 2 just had recently installed fish passage, and then 2 others were in the planning stage. And there was another group there on the field trip as well from Gardner, going through a similar process with one of their streams, and that was interesting to talk to those people too, because it's sort of right through a downtown, and that was just really illuminating to talk to other. I didn't even know about the work that was going on in Gardner, and we all sort of exchanged comments about how much did this one cost, how much did that one cost. There was one that was kind of similar to Seabright that. They had kept that one because it created a community swimming area, and that was just definitely not something that they were going to get rid of. They installed a technical fish passage. They had all the different considerations in terms of whether you have a landowner that wants to agree to pay all of the ongoing costs of the fish ladder maintenance, whether you have a dam owner that wants to keep the dam or wants to just eliminate their costs, or whether you have a town that's going to have to be paying for it in the long term. Technical fish passages tend to be cheaper in the short term, but a lot more expensive in the long term because you have to monitor it. And so for them, they had had to fundraise almost completely privately because the Fish Passage project didn't really meet the goals of a lot of these national programs. But, they had somebody that wanted it for the private property owner. He was so enthusiastic about it that he just wanted to pay for part of that
Private
himself.
funding thing is pretty big in the country right now.
What's that?
The private funding thing is quite big in the country right now.
Right.
In this area.
And so, for that project, they went to foundations and all kinds of things, but have gotten almost no grant funding that's similar to what we're just getting now.
Great.
But yeah, that was really interesting. And then, let's see, the other thing was we got Stanton's name on the honor roll. That was wonderful. His sister came. Audra and I had a chance to talk with her for a while. Owen spent a really long time doing that all for free.
Did a
He
good
didn't want
job.
us to talk about him at all. But yeah,
Thank
that's
you very
it.
much. Tells you, I
Nothing to
think
add.
I skipped right by, myself included, except I did have brief discussions this week with MDOT a little bit. I mentioned to you, Audra. It was related to they're racing through the property owners up on Route 1 very quickly, actually. But that's a separate, we talked about that before. But their projects are getting in some significant trouble because of budget bidding. And in principle, you're hitting main-funded projects. Some of their projects, like Route 1 North, are mostly funded by the federal government. Those not quite as bad, but this could impact us next spring with stop and go to, the landing thing. But
Oh, I think it's very likely to.
I think it's very likely
And even
also.
our own local projects,
Yeah.
I think our strategy going forward, we're not going to bid anything out individually. We're going to try to bundle everything together because
yeah.
really that's the only way I think that we can expect to have a price that's even close to what we originally budgeted for. And the hard thing about the way that we do it is, because of the way that the budget process works, we'll, kind of come up with an estimate for a project and budget for it. And then sometimes it's a year before we can bid it out and do the project.
Right.
So, that's kind of put us in a position where we frequently find that, we're either right up to the line or, we're kind of far off when the bids come in.
especially as long as we're in this market and we don't know how long it's going to last. We just
Right.
don't.
And I mean, we've been fortunate because, we've got staff who figured out ways to make it work or, reduce the scope or find other sources of funding. But I think that it's going to get more and more difficult. So I think that,
It definitely affects the budget cycle for sure.
yes. And I think that we're just going to have to be smarter in the way that we bid out projects.
And the level of contingency we put on project estimates too.
Yes.
Anyway, that's all I would want to mention now. That is a concern going forward as we get into budget cycle for next year. On to the approval of the board minutes from November 6th, 2019. Are there any comments on the board minutes?
The only inaccuracy that I saw,
We have to
Which-
hunt for them, by the way.
which is shocking, actually, because your ability to
Catch it all.
digest and actually clearly understand what we're talking about, it's probably surpasses ours. But on the first page and under select board reports, Michaela said she and Stephanie, a former conservation committee member, have been looking at the new proposed law, Maine's existing extended producer responsibility law. That should just be changed to, I think that was the slide that I had put in the background, but change it to a new extended producer responsibility law. And then I think from my perspective, we might be getting into the territory of more information than we need. Again, I don't know what others
No, I would-
think that it might, how long does it take you to do this? Probably hours. I think we could get away easily with just more of a basic summary. Feel free to say, a lengthy conversation took place with Stearns regarding MCAD, or especially, since we have the video and we have all of that to go back to.
Yeah, I would agree. I think first of all, it's not a criticism, it's trying to make your job easier because your notes are phenomenal. I don't know how you get all this information from us talking all the time, but I think the trend in minutes is more toward focusing on action items and discussion related to action items of substance, because we're going to rely on the video and the recording much more, so make it easier on yourself.
I think what may be a good suggestion is in the minutes, at the end of the minutes, put the link in to where the meeting particularly is. So if people want to refer to more.
Oh, that
more
would be
depth,
helpful.
They could have the link right there in the
Good idea.
minutes.
That's a
idea.
great idea, yeah.
But for the one change that Allison had, does anybody else have any modifications to November 6th?
I
Do
make
get
a motion, we approve as amended.
Second.
Discussion. All's in favor? 4-0. Thank you very much, Kendall. Great job. The fourth item on the agenda is the approval of a vintner license for 16 Bayview Inn at 16 Bayview Street. As I reviewed the package, it seemed complete. So are there any comments, or do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion, we approve the victual and lodging licenses for 16 Bayview Inn.
Second.
Discussion. All's in favor? Eric, do you want to say anything?
Matthew.
Sorry, Matthew.
That's all right. I just like to be here out of respect and appreciate everybody's,
Getting your name wrong? Yeah. Thank you. Item 5 is the review of the commercial passenger vessel agreement for day sailors in the Camden Harbor. And well, it's actually an agreement and licenses is what it really is, right, Mark? Do you want to come up and chat, or we can just go right into it?
No, I mean, I think it would be helpful for
Yeah, I think
the
so,
public
too.
to get an overview of.
The
I love
approach.
the options.
The approach,
and
yeah.
Let us hear. Yeah.
Right.
And just a note, Mark, in the package we have, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it has the, we have the agreement, the umbrella agreement pages. That came last in the package. It kind of causes confusion because that's the first piece really, is the overall umbrella, and then followed by the development of the various licenses for the various different types of users. But why don't you explain a little bit about the approach so everybody, as Allison suggested, the public knows what we're doing, or you're recommending.
Okay. What we've done here is we've created a commercial passenger vessel license agreement, which identifies all the legal aspects per se of the agreement. And then we've gone to addendums which spell out the specific operating agreements or operating issues of the agreement. So, and in the commercial passenger vessel license agreement, what we've done is extended that to a 3-year term. And our concept here is to tie this in with all passenger vessels, the schooners, the day sailors, all passenger vessels come due at the same time every 3 years. So one thing we've stated here is if an agreement is reassigned, that the termination date still remains the same.
I see. Keep them in sync.
Keeping everything in sync, yes. So, the only question we had maybe for the select board is the amount of insurance required.
This is the only question in terms of the overall agreement, and to talk over the blasting horn for a minute.
Right.
But for the overreaching document,
Probably the day sailors.
no way, no way. Thank you, Dominic. So the only element that was in question, well, is the amount of insurance, because, and just to be clear, in the past, I believe we had 500,000 for day sailors and $1 million for the windjammer type vessels, correct?
Correct.
And now, since it's an overreaching agreement for everybody, it says $500,000.
Correct.
So that would fall to both parties then, in this situation, or any other party that signs up, because there's more than those two. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
I have a question. You have some, in the parts that we have, there are other options that you list throughout the agreement.
That's through the.
That's on the
Addendum.
That's
the
next
addendum.
document.
Oh, okay.
That's the addendum. But you're correct, Mark. The overreaching document, which it's a little confusing, it's the commercial passenger vessel license agreement is the umbrella for day sailor addendum, day sailor second boat addendum, windjammer public landing addendum, windjammer library park addendum, and steamboat landing addendum, if
Right.
and when they should be developed.
So the design
If and
here
when they
is,
should be developed.
Well, we don't have a steamboat landing addendum, to my knowledge.
But the others we do.
Tonight we'll be discussing two of them, the day sailor addendum and the second boat day sailor addendum. And then soon, as I understood the plan, the windjammer boat 2, windjammer addenda, is that right? Addendum, will be drafted and presented to the windjammer crew, because their current license expires May 1st, I think, or May something, whatever it is.
Somewhere
And it
around
will
there,
be
yes.
reading starting
So-
on January 1st retroactively on that agreement when it's developed. So they're both
Exactly.
all in sync. Yeah, Tim.
exactly.
Can I just ask maybe a clarifying question?
Sure.
That I know the answer to, but I want to make sure it doesn't get confusing.
Yep.
Is that a good way to look at it? The commercial passenger vessel agreement is boilerplate agreement for any commercial passenger vessel that we deal with in town.
Yes.
And then there will be an addendum specifically for the type of vessel. So boilerplate agreement,
Stating how they operate.
addendum for day sailors, addendum for windjammers. Should there be a different type of passenger
Yeah,
vessel
we
down the
could be-
road, then there's an addendum for that.
Yeah, we could have, animal
See, and
vessels.
part of the theory behind this is it's sounding a little bit complicated right now, but part of the theory is to uncomplicate it. Because every boat now operates under this agreement here, but then each individual boat operates under this agreement,
Right.
and how they proceed.
Yep, yep. So the only issue that the Harbor Committee hasn't quite resolved and we have to resolve is this insurance question, in addition to any other questions we have in the document, of course.
Yes.
But that's the only one we haven't quite closed on.
Correct.
And Audra, is there any reason why we wouldn't be consistent on insurance requirements across the
No,
boats?
there's no good reason why we wouldn't,
Either.
especially if the idea of the commercial passenger vessel license agreement is to create consistency amongst all of the,
Yeah.
commercial passenger
Yes.
boats in the harbor.
Is 500,000 enough insurance coverage?
I mean, typically and there's no real
Magic number.
magic number, with most of our other agreements, we require $1 million
Or two.
or $2 million. A
So,
little less, but
hold on, why would we have less than the normal thing for these?
Probably wouldn't.
yeah, I mean, I don't have like a good
I don't
hard or
either.
fast rule or reason why we've required what we've required in the past.
Don't either.
Why did we decide to go, are we going to everybody as 500,000?
That's what,
Reduce,
that's
we're
as-
going with the
that's-
lower,
That's as drafted, that's what it says.
is that the right thing to do?
Okay, Mark, do you have a recommendation of why 500,000 instead of $1 million?
This is a paragraph that was drawn up by Sandy Welty, so this was his recommendation. I suggested that we send it to our attorney and have him determine the actual amount required.
Well, I don't think an attorney would actually do that, to tell you the truth, but this is more of a judgment call on perceived liability.
Questions?
Yes, you're going to have to come forward, please.
Is it fair does every type of boat represent the same amount of, I feel, it seems like the Lively Lady would do less damage than some of the bigger ones, I don't know.
Elliot, do you have a comment?
Elliot Thompson is my name. The current Windjammer agreement has $1 million.
Right, understood.
Town of Rockport agreement for the Heron is $1 million.
Thank you.
Our current day sailor agreement is $500,000.
Understood. Thank you for that, Elliot. It's a judgment call. One of the concerns I have is just that almost every agreement I've seen in this town, it's nothing less than $1 million.
Yes.
In fact, we're going to look at another agreement tonight that has a $2 million policy in it.
We don't need to make a decision on this insurance piece tonight, right? This is,
If you want to approve the documents, we do.
we're not approving
We
the
haven't even
document
shown it to
tonight.
the attorney.
Yeah, we.
Bill's seen it. He doesn't really have any.
Offer an opinion.
He doesn't have any comment, and I mean, he wouldn't typically,
Lawyers don't comment on insurance coverages.
no.
Now, lawyers don't comment on insurance coverage.
I mean, they wouldn't they'd
That's
specify that you
inaccurate.
have it, but they wouldn't necessarily say, they wouldn't specify an exact amount.
I mean, there are definitely lawyers that give
Let's not debate the
advice on
lawyers.
who-
What do we want to do with
Well,
this?
I don't feel qualified to.
As we do have some boat owners there, the day sailors are curious to see what they,
Not everybody.
Let's raise the amount until they all start getting upset. And then, I don't know.
Well, a simple question, I mean, the day sailors, how do you feel about $1 million coverage?
Yeah.
Aaron, come on up.
Hi, everybody.
Aaron. When we're thinking about that, I'm curious what the if there's a huge difference in premium for you guys between 500,000 and $1 million.
Aaron, introduce yourself, please.
Aaron Lincoln. I own the Schooner Aladdin and Cutter Owl.
Thank you.
So if you were to look at my two policies, you would realize that when you take more than 6 passengers, a very different policy is written than when you take, so 6 and more is a very different policy than 6 and less.
Right.
So I don't know for myself, exactly, but I would guess that if I just had the 6-pack boat, then it might be impossible to get a full $1 million policy running that in an affordable way. I'm just going to guess. Anybody who has a boat bigger than that, probably, I have a $1 million policy and it blankets both boats because that's just what I have. But that's more like personal,
Yeah.
discretion about what I think is right, what I'm willing my liability to be.
Yep.
But I don't know that, but I would think that you would do almost as well to ask maybe somebody who's at Allen Agency who
Yep.
deals with a lot of these
Yeah.
policies to just
Yeah,
ask. 'cause-
that'd be better. That'd be more informative.
It's clear.
Yep.
Let's try to be clear. I'm learning from you.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you very much.
You.
a couple other things.
Why don't we, if we're not going to make a decision.
Well, yeah, I was going to say,
So-
I'm meeting with our insurance broker on Friday anyway, so
Let's do that.
if you're not comfortable, I can get a recommendation from her.
We've got to draft some, maybe have to redraft some things anyway, so we can take this to the 3rd, because we'd obviously like in this case, the day sailors to have, an agreement in their hands before January 1st, which is the effective date. But we could finalize it in the 3rd. So we could take that as one action to get the insurance readout on things like Aaron and other things you've mentioned. Let's.
And the point is, I mean, that's minimum coverage.
That's
So-
my opinion, but none of us are not insurance experts.
Right.
Just said I've seen in most of all of our agreements is nothing less than 7 digits that I've seen in any agreement to date in the town of Camden. Why? I'm not an insurance expert.
Ask one other question.
You have to come up.
Go ahead. I'll go after you. We all get along pretty good. It's amazing. Another question I would have is that when you write that, you're talking about personal liability, right, versus vessel liability? Because then you're talking, I don't know if you know this, but there's usually 6 policies that are attached to a regular passenger vessel policy.
The description
So
of
we
the
have
inscription-
multiple-
there's a description in the agreement on what kind of insurance it is.
Yep, in the new agreement or the old
I'm
agreement?
talking about the new agreement. We're talking about this in front of us.
Where, can you tell me the?
It's
page
item
number?
9. It says the licensee shall obtain and maintain terms of insurance coverage, including standard marine hull and P&I policies, along with state workers' comp insurance for claims rising out of blah, 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 including property damage.
Yeah, so there's like an outward property damage, there's an inward property damage, right? There's employee, there's passenger, there's the public dock,
Yep.
but they're all written as separate policies in a marine policy because it goes to marine law, not land law.
Right.
So it's a little
More complicated.
Yeah, so like a direct sentence doesn't really completely cover that either.
What if like somebody's truck slams into the harbor master's building or something, and it's like
How about
covered under your
somebody's
vessel?
schooner jumps up and hits the harbor master building? The only reason I say that is because the truck would be a regular car insurance policy.
Let's hold on this.
Makes sense.
And have the insurance agent,
Yeah.
our insurance agent review this and make sure we don't get any confusion going on.
If,
One
if-
second, Aaron, please. Just 1 second. So then we can continue.
I don't know what my, yeah.
I think we have to have this, we're not insurance experts and.
Oh, and I'm certain our broker's probably written the policies
They
for
have.
most of the boat
I
owners
think
in the
the
harbor.
old one was just covering personal liability and damage to town property. Just so there's like a, there's a separate policy written just to protect the town of Camden on most of these policies, I'm guessing. That's
Okay.
how mine's written.
Okay, we'll review that with the insurance coverage people and see what it comes to in the final draft on the 3rd. All right, thanks, Aaron.
Speculate about all the things that could go wrong,
Yeah,
what they
right.
might need insurance for.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to think of right
Right.
now, like.
Is there anything else?
So that, I mean, that's exactly
That's
what
fine.
our opinion was. I
Well-
mean, none of us on the committee are
Right.
insurance experts
Right,
either.
and I would rely on Sandy, he doesn't have quite a bit of knowledge in this, he's a lawyer, by the way.
Yeah.
That does have quite a bit of knowledge in the marine law, so
Weigh in on these
they-
things,
they're
so.
not on the mounts, usually. But anyway, the only other comment is that, on this document is the signatory has to be the town manager, not me.
What?
The chair of the select board doesn't sign town agreements.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Hold
Thank
on,
you.
this is what's,
What?
I feel like this is a personal philosophy.
No, it's not. I don't have a contractual responsibility in this town.
Okay, but it's still, the select board authorizes the town manager to
I'm just
sign.
talking about the signatory, yes. When we approve it, the town manager will sign it.
That's your only comment for the whole thing?
Yep, on this document, yeah.
Okay, when are we going to talk about the other?
We're going to, next, one
Coming
at a
up
time.
right now.
It's not, I'm not trying to be difficult, it's not entirely clear to me at what
Ask
point,
questions.
like, where does parking fall into this?
The next piece.
Next thing,
Uh-huh.
okay.
Okay. I would like to hear what he has to say.
Ramiro,
Thank you.
sure.
How you doing?
Good, and you?
Good. Ramiro Acevedo Ramos, Cuna Surprise. I just want to ask you one quick question about insurance. I know it's kind of a big deal. If you have any, I think I presented this to the board maybe last year or a couple of years ago about if you have any ideas about enforcing insurance on the Steamboat Landing area. So I know there is some boats running out of the Steamboat Landing and you don't require boats to have insurance. So I don't know if you have thought about that.
Which
You mean
boats are running out
commercially?
of Steamboat Landing?
Well, there is,
Dinghies?
nope, there's commercial passenger boats running out of Steamboat Landing. And
All right.
What do you- can you-
We'll check,
well, there's 6 boats.
You're making an allegation, or is this like a?
No, I'm not.
no,
I'm just saying that, that there was in the past, like,
let me
boats
take
running.
a good question, by the way.
Yeah,
But I'd
no,
take a
I mean-
step back and say that, as I read this, there's a possibility of adding a Steamboat Landing addendum to this document, which they would have to sign also.
Yeah.
So they would be under the same criterion as anybody else.
Exactly, because it's town property, and I was hoping that, it was going to be a rule even for all of the passenger boats, especially 6 boats, 6 passengers that operate out of Steamboat Landing.
Did they
and
have an agreement with the town, or is this
They
like an
don't.
ad hoc kind of?
They don't.
Are
But they
are
will.
you saying like? Can you give me an example, or?
Well, there is, in the past, there's this catamaran called McKenna that was running out of there. There is.
What do you mean by running out of there, letting people get on and off from there?
Meaning like
Passengers
there's
for hire.
actually passengers in and out of that dock
For hire.
for hire.
Right. So that's
And-
am I correct, like that if they're not licensed, but that they need to be licensed to the town to do something like that? And by
They will.
not being licensed to the town to do something like, to operate for hire like that off of the town landing, that doesn't pass the muster test with us? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah,
Right.
it is.
Steamboat Landing's supposed to be a public boat launch for,
Yep.
recreational boaters.
Remember,
Yacht club drop somebody off there, is that a, I mean,
Well, the yacht club has its, I'm not sure.
or
what
like
the-
Lyman Morse, or?
Yeah, the Lyman Morse has probably its
it's
private
private.
property, so it's.
They can do what they want.
Their own
Steamboat
deal. But
Landing?
Steamboat Landing, it's.
The land is us.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I'm saying, at what point does it rise to the level of, say, a big boat that's not a cruise ship, but just they've hired somebody to bring them back and forth on a tender? Is that a,
if you're running a 6-passenger vessel in town, it's a commercial operation. And
Right.
if you're running out of the Steamboat Landing, which is town property, I assume that, they should have insurance like everybody else, so.
Again, I bring
If
it
they're
back,
just
I wanna
passing
bring us back
by.
to the agreement as it's drafted. There are 5 possible licenses that could be given as well as this commercial vessel license agreement. One of them is Steamboat Landing Addendum.
Correct.
So they would have to sign the same document, this license agreement, and the addendum, which includes the insurance.
Okay, so it's in the works.
We haven't got to the Steamboat Landing
Yeah,
piece
that's
yet.
all. I think we're just
But,
trying to
but that's good input, Romero. Romero, that's good input. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good input.
No, I
Seriously.
presented it
has-
before, and
There has to be, if I hear what you're saying correctly, there has to be a level playing field.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly. So now we're
Good.
talking about insurance. I thought I brought this,
Yeah,
because,
Yep.
if any operation, and any boats running out of like town property should have insurance. That's what I'm saying.
running out of, on a regular basis?
On a regular basis, correct.
We'll have to investigate that, obviously, Ramiro, but
Yeah.
if that's the case, this is set up to be able to handle that.
All right, awesome.
Thank you, boss.
I'm not sure that we're aware of that.
So-
Not at all. I'm
So,
not at all.
well-
That's right.
Where can I how can I take a catamaran ride from Steamboat Landing?
These are
I'm-
future issues, and
Okay.
what's complicated about that is when does a charter boat become
Right.
a day
Yeah,
sailor?
right.
And, I mean, that's,
Yep.
that's all being talked about, and that's in the works, and we don't need to complicate that
No,
with
not now.
insurance issues.
All right.
It's a bigger issue, really.
Yes, definitely.
In your review, or the select board, a review of this vessel license agreement, are there any other comments besides the ones we've discussed that you see at the moment? Before we go on to the next pieces, that may help if we go on to the next piece, this may help to put into a better picture for all of us to go through the whole package. Maybe we want to come back to this agreement later if we want to.
Right.
But
So,
now, assuming, just to go back, this commercial passenger license agreement will be signed, hopefully, when it's completed by, let's say, the Public Landing Day Sailor Addendum, which is a separate document, which we will discuss next.
correct. So on the initial agreement, you check mark one of those boxes for the addendum, okay? And you get one of this for every boat. Okay? So the next one is the Day Sailor Addendum. The first item on here is fees. And what we've done is we broke it down to 3 options, where we keep the fee of $2,500 as is, or we increase the fees, or we're calling it an à la carte fee structure, which we talked about this and tossed it around, and it gets pretty complicated. But the concept was you charge a fee for the boat, you charge a fee for the table, you charge a fee for parking. Basically, we've nixed that. And we would recommend either option 1 or option 2.
I see. So the Harbor Committee is recommending 1 or 2.
Yes,
It either stays the same at 2,500 or it increases.
correct.
One fee across the board for everything.
Yes.
How long has it been 2,500?
It's been a while. I know it's been at least the last 3 years.
I see.
Did the Harbor Committee have any recommendations?
For a fee,
A fee increase.
we didn't. Our fee schedule is next on our agenda, which will be the first week of December.
Why don't we, rather than jump in at answering each one at a time, there's two or three I know that are in here you mentioned in your cover letter. Let's go through the other two or three, then we come back and, kind of get the, because everybody has to get a feeling for the whole document.
So you haven't looked at fees yet?
We haven't.
So you don't really have a recommendation yet? So that would be an additional reason not to vote on this tonight?
Correct.
Okay.
We're going to make changes. But input would be good. I think one of the, I think you said one of the challenges, or you said, Taylor, one of the challenges is here that it's kind of, usually we go out and see what, for moorings, we go see what Rockport's charging or Rockland's charging for mooring, but we don't really have a comparable for this kind of operation.
We don't.
Because what they're doing is just, they're kind of temporarily, constantly coming into our landing, picking up and dropping off. They're not docked there.
Most boats we would have to compare with have full-time dock.
Yep, that's more common.
And that's
Big difference.
Apples and oranges, yeah.
a big difference.
So one is this, the fees thing. And go on, please.
Now, as we go down through, it's scheduling. Scheduling is the same as the last agreement. The next is conduct, and that just employee conduct, staff conduct, and so on.
Okay.
Why are town employees mixed in with the licensee?
Where are we here?
C, conduct, first bullet.
The licensee and town employees shall extend courtesy to members, et cetera, et cetera.
To members of the general public, town employees, licensees, and other
Question.
boat captains at all times. It's like, we're all, well, I don't know, I just feel like this should,
It's just licensee.
yeah.
Yeah, it should.
All right.
That was just a copy
Gotcha,
from the,
Allison. Okay.
It's like a really roundabout way of saying everybody has to be nice to each other all the
What's
time.
wrong with that? Licensee only for, I'm just taking a note on C. Okay. All right. Dockage.
Hold on, I'm
Go
still in
ahead.
contact.
That's fine.
The licensee shall permit no verbal solicitation for passengers, probably of passengers.
I think what that means is they're not going, hey, want to get on a boat?
She's just correcting.
That's a grammatical issue. I think it should be of. You don't,
well,
you don't solicit for them, or for would mean like on behalf of.
Well, you're soliciting for passengers. It's like, you come ride my boat.
Oh.
Come ride the boat rather than soliciting somebody that's already a passenger.
Oh, like when you go to a beach in the Caribbean and
Right.
they try to sell you a bracelet.
Yeah.
I think that's,
I think I came to.
That's really good.
I think that's a good,
No verbal solicitation.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Nothing can, okay. All right. And how are, this is an overarching question, the enforcement of this, all these things. I mean, the ticket table staff shall not bring animals to work or engage in any other activity that might create a public safety hazard. So,
Enforcement's pretty much up
I
to
mean-
the harbor master.
okay.
And if
I mean, I
there's-
love dogs, but it's just a known fact that many people who sell tickets have often had dogs.
Right.
No,
Well,
Not anymore.
not anymore.
too afraid.
People are too afraid.
Some people are afraid of it, dogs.
Oh, I thought you meant like,
No, afraid
the
of
people that
ticket
are-
tables.
oh, okay. But, I mean, I've had I'm not going to say any names right now, but it's, when was that practice done away with?
Well, I don't know, they put the law into effect like 6 or 7 years ago.
Oh.
They changed it.
So nobody that sells tickets now has their dog with them during the day?
Not well, I mean, if there's some employee while they're walking around on the dock, which happens occasionally,
Okay.
sits down, they can walk their dog, but
Right.
not while they're on
Right.
the clock.
And they can be on the boat. You
Right.
can bring your dog on the boat. My dog will ride it.
Right.
But he's not at the ticket booth.
This is not changed in the previous agreement, is that correct? All right.
That is what is in the previous agreement.
Has dockage changed from the previous agreement?
Dockage has not changed. It was requested to change it to 30 minutes, but after a great deal of discussion, we've went back and forth and back and forth. We're back at 15 minutes. And everybody agrees to that.
I mean, it's really the harbor master's job to balance that out.
It is. It is.
Tickets-
And
tickets-
part of the thought process there is that the day sailors wanted 30 minutes so that they could have a lunch break. Well, the way this is written, the harbor master actually has that ability to grant them the 30 minutes.
Right.
So
For 30 minutes sometimes, anyway.
Yeah, they
yes.
do.
This is
right.
for a minimum.
Yeah,
A minimum stay of 15 minutes.
Right.
So, some of them,
Yep,
I mean, they could be
maximum
there for an hour if
Yep.
there are no other boat trips and
Right.
it doesn't
Right.
impede anybody else.
Right.
The maximum stay is 15 minutes.
It's a
right
balancing
now.
act by the harbor master. He really has the prerogative here. Ticket sales.
So ticket sales. What's stated in here is the wording from the original contract.
Okay.
Ticket sales is separate, so we're saying that people can't bring their dogs to work at all in the first part.
Yes.
I don't know. Do we want to do that? No,
Well, it's staff.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's conduct of the staff.
Yeah.
sorry.
If they want to bring them on the boat,
So,
it's Aaron's problem.
ticket sales, there's been a great deal of conversation about
sure.
this. We've given you three options. One is to leave it as is.
Right.
One, to move to a combined location, which has been discussed. And the other is to charge an additional fee.
Right, which goes back to your à la carte thing.
It does, and that just gets very complicated.
Mark?
I've thought a lot about this because I've had a lot of conversations about it, and there's been a lot of discussion in the past. And I spent some time going down there this summer, looking at the tables, and I have some strong thoughts about it. Number one, since the bushes were taken out and the tables were moved back, it's much more open to people moving back and forth and doing that
Much
stuff.
better.
And the other thing about it is, I spent 30-plus years coming here on vacation before I moved here. And I realized that having the tables where they are is an advantage to the town, because we used to go look at all the tables and we would make decisions on which boat to ride on. I think it's something that makes the harbor special. And for the tourists coming in and are going to use this service, they want that handiness there. And I think it's an important, I would vote to leave it as is, because I think it works really well. Now that the bushes have taken away and it's moved back, I think it's a much more people-friendly location, and I think it's an important part of the harbor, and that's what a lot of people come to look for.
So one other issue with that was that the boats were using the docks, which were for pedestrians to use. They've resolved that issue also.
Right.
So, and the committee agrees and would recommend leaving it as is, because of the way it's been redesigned and because of the way they have worked out the issues.
So that was the second bullet we'll come back to resolve.
Do we feel like all of the day sailors and their staff now have a really clear understanding of the fact that they don't own those benches, though?
Aaron, you have to come up. You have to run, though.
They don't, they're not included in they're just
So
to be used during the
Susan
day.
spoke last year to you, and I was in Nova Scotia without a telephone, but I had internet, so I could see the conversation.
Yeah.
I could finish it.
Yeah.
So long ago, before any of us were really kicking around very much, there was a group called the Wharf Rats, and they were the original people who sold tickets for Frank Swift in the 30s. And as they were dying, the bench was down there. Well, it's just real. They were all in their 80s. They
Okay.
came up to me and asked if they actually asked the town if they would continue to fund their bench, because they were the original people of the wharf. and no one wanted to pick up the bill, so I picked up the bill, and then I actually put the table, I actually moved the bench to where I put my table so that I would no longer have anybody's memorial bench not usable. Does that make sense? Like, I wasn't covering anybody's memorial bench anymore. So I knew I never owned any space down there. But I bought that or started paying for that public bench.
Yep.
In the
Basically-
same way that people pay for the memorial benches,
I
though.
just pay for a memorial bench every year. But I paid for one that nobody was going to be around for anymore. Like, I thought it was important to the town of Camden's history because I thought those people were very
Yep.
interesting. And I was lucky enough to know them when I started out 20 years ago. But they're all, for the most part, gone.
Oh.
And so what Susie was trying to say is that we heard what you were saying a long time ago, and we tried to find a creative way to not take a person's bench that, if I wanted to go sit at Ben Cashin's bench,
Yeah.
I'd like to go sit there. I knew the guy. In fact, there's quite a few people down there I know now. But does that make sense?
I feel like,
We don't use any of the benches anymore.
but nobody that pay, even if it's, so to just the fact that it's a memorial bench reserved for a specific person or this or that, even the people so like Vinny and his friends pay for a bench that is for Trevor.
Right.
They also don't have that's not their bench.
Oh,
That
I know I don't
they-
own the bench.
Like, and if they were,
I thought
so
it
you
was.
don't have, nobody has special rights
No.
to the bench. You just happen to pay for the bench and be a day sailor, but that doesn't,
Yeah, but do you understand what I'm saying? It's like I didn't want Ben's family to come down and not be able to sit at their bench whenever they wanted
Right.
because that was a
Right.
memorial to them. So instead of taking where our ticket tables used to be set up over the benches, I was just trying to take over a bench that I knew that people weren't going to be coming to. Does that make any sense? So I could never block somebody who wanted to
Mark,
sit on
you
their
had a comment.
son's or
but
grandfather's
if,
bench.
And Mark, give a comment here.
during
Mark.
off hours and all of that, it's,
I know I don't own it, and I
okay.
never been confused by that.
Basically,
I
Aaron,
don't
what you're
think you've
saying
been
is,
confused, but I think,
basically what you're saying is you were making a donation
Basically, yeah.
to, reserve that bench for the people that it memorializes.
I think Frank Swift's granddaughter and maybe a handful of other people, that's about it, out of a lot of people over the years. But when they got older, they got that bench for the people that were no longer there, and I just continued it on, basically.
Taylor, did you got something?
Is the issue at hand the 24/7 use of the benches? Is that the?
it's that people have repeatedly felt that the benches, that area was monopolized by the day sailors for a variety of reasons. Some,
Wait a minute.
I mean, I can see you guys you can't really.
1 second.
Well, no, I mean, this is simply a fact that whether it's right or wrong, there are many people who have felt that the day sailors expanded
Jeff?
too much, whether it be that their backpacks and things just
Yeah.
for a variety of reasons, and that sometimes, there was a period of time where things were getting left down there. It seems like there has been pushback. There's been compromise. The situation has gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
That is clarifying, Aaron, in a certain sense because it was really misstated in the meeting. It really seemed like the confusion was much deeper than.
Yeah.
I mean, the town would reserve the right, I think, to make you guys all switch benches too. So.
Jeff?
Not that we want to do that, but.
I just finish the thread and then sit down.
Please.
So the problem mostly with the just feeling ownership over a location was the utility poles that were directly behind said benches. They were all grandfathered to the businesses that we had. So that the telephone system that's down there isn't done anywhere else in the state of Maine, as far as I know. They don't run utilities like that, so they're grandfathered. So we could not move things. So it made us pretty anxious about being in the same. I heard.
Yeah, and that I didn't even realize, and I didn't realize that there's also a phone service that's
There is.
provided, and
There is, yeah.
it's, I mean,
So Sean's phone number, he couldn't move his telephone number 2 over, and I couldn't move mine 3 to the right.
Right.
So we kind of were stuck in the areas that we were in, but now,
The telephone poles, I mean, at some point, that
Not
whole
even
public
telephone
landing
poles.
has to get redone.
yep.
I mean, it's going to have to get redone. It's going to, the sea's going to rise. Some things are going to have to change there at a certain point.
The town solved it. I mean, we've all worked together to make some movements.
Jeff Beck with the Sloop Heritage. I just wanted to give the simplest answer I could to your original question, which is that do we all understand that we don't own those benches? All I remember is that last year, I don't get to all the meetings. My life is a little chaotic right now. But anyway, we were told point blank, hey, you guys don't own those benches and you're not to use them at all. And so the benches were separated in a way that we all had our ticket table and a chair next to our table. Nobody, like we were told, we were not to be sitting on the benches. We're not to have our stuff on the benches. And so for this last summer, nobody's had anything on the benches at all or covering them.
Aaron, not even that one bench.
Not Aaron. No, I mean, I'm
just kidding. I
understand, but I understand that you hear about it from people who
It's
may
really
feel that
hard to
it's
sort out
an
everything down there.
intrusion on their,
I mean-
on their bench.
Question comes back to, do we want to?
Thank you. That's good to know.
Everybody's
That's a
been abiding by that rule this last summer.
I didn't even know about that rule. It's like this whole little,
That's good.
it's very difficult to sort out
It is.
what happens down there. And once in a while, everybody goes ballistic and I learn a bunch of new things. And
Good answer, Jeff. I guess the question comes back to Mark is, does the select board want to recommend some language be put in to just reinforce that? We could do that.
I mean, I don't even
Sounds
think
like
it was
it's-
like a rule situation. It was more like,
Right.
you know, we got a lot of feedback that people noticed some encroaching and members of the public were unhappy with it. And
Right.
then Steve spoke to the day sailors and they were all very accommodating and said, we don't want to cause trouble that's going to get back to, you know, the select board or the town office, or we're more than happy to, you know, work with you and figure out something. I
it was
think that
kind of
that's-
like that. This was partially, you were on vacation for a little bit and it was like a
Well, no,
nightmare.
I heard a lot about it.
Well, again,
beforehand,
coming
but-
back to the root of this, do we want to put in a specific language that just reinforces that? Clearly, they're cooperating. I don't see there's a problem that I saw this summer, but if we want to put language in that says, you know, they're prohibited from using the benches for any reason whatsoever, the words, we can add that to the agreement.
I don't know. It would be nice. This would be an important time to actually have input from the harbor master. So-
One other thing we've put in this agreement is there is an annual review
Correct.
on their performance.
Correct.
So
That's in the overall agreement,
that is in,
isn't it? It's the overall agreement.
I don't know which one it's in.
It's a
to be
commercial
honest with
agreement.
you.
You keep talking, I'll look for it.
I mean, this seems to have solved itself with just the
It
normal
does. It
process. It was the threat of the kiosk was so horrific that they solved the problem on their own, and now we don't, I think it seems to have gone okay. Parking, on the other hand, I think is
You know,
not.
my philosophy is if you over-regulate it,
Yep.
it gives you more loopholes for people to say, well,
Right.
it says this, so I'm
Exactly.
entitled to this.
I see. We have to have some faith that we can work with these characters, because we do, and it's working. So I think it's a good discussion, certainly, but I think it has gotten better since.
I think it's,
agree with that
it's
sentiment.
definitely gotten better.
All right.
It looks better down there too. I don't get stung by bees as much
Let's
either.
go to what I believe is the last
So,
Terrible.
subjective item, which is parking.
so to sum that up,
Yep.
the Harbor Committee would recommend leaving the tables
Got it.
where they're at
Got it.
and operating as it
Got
is.
it. The last, a big paragraph is parking.
Parking. Again, we've got three options, which is probably four options. The first option is to leave it as is, and the wording is on this document, as it is.
Which provides basically one parking space for, a permitted parking space for the landing, is that correct?
Yeah.
Well,
To me, I mean, that's a very complicated paragraph to understand.
It really
and
is.
The way I read that is it gives them ability to park down there with a permit under special circumstances. It's interpreted that it gives them ability to park down there all the time.
one space?
Yeah, so this is the current language.
Oh,
That's
yes.
correct.
And it's just, I mean, there's a big problem, I think, with the way it's been happening. So with this language isn't working. I've talked to the police department as well, the ticketing officer. And it's not just the day sailors. It's the downtown business employees that play this game of
Moving
shuffling. But I definitely have seen day sailor employees, ticket staff, go right back and forth repeatedly between their selling station and their car. And it's the Camden town, somewhere in one of our documents that we supposedly abide by, it was really meant, there's also supposed to be something that says like no employee should park down there ever. It's been not even for not even like as a 2-hour thing. Like their employees should never park there, even if they're going to be there in the 2-hour window. It's almost like every downtown business employee should have to have a sticker on their car that specifically says you can't park down, like the opposite of a parking permit. Like I just don't know how are we going to enforce this, and can you guys?
This is a very.
A camera. We need a camera down there because it's not fair because it's not just them. You guys do? You do? With a camera?
No, not a camera. We're looking into other
Why not a
options
camera?
around this. There's other options that would manage that better, that we can.
Oh, I know. I want that too,
Yeah.
but we should have a camera.
But let's talk about what this agreement is going to say and not going to say. There are 3 or 4 options, as Mark suggested. One of the options, option 2, would be to prohibit, plain and simple, any parking down there, period. How we enforce it, another subject.
Well, the problem is that
the month
the
of
language
July
doesn't
and
work.
For the month of July and August only, correct.
Yes. I mean, there's no question. I mean,
No,
the
it doesn't.
boats, when they're outfitting
Right.
and then when they're decommissioning, they need to be done.
Wait a minute, and the third option is the à la carte thing again.
Yes.
Charge additional for
Yes.
a parking space.
Just to be clear, so that they're not,
Right.
the
Right.
Harbor Committee had recommended going with option 1.
Leave as is.
Thought you guys were supposed to be the new Harbor Committee, not the.
We are.
No, that's doesn't mean you're going to change their mind about things.
We recommend the status quo.
This is kind of key, because to me, it's opening up, it continues to open up the thing about other businesses around the landing and utilizing parking. You do or you don't, and I agree the enforcement thing is a bear. I mean, I get that. I know there are all kinds of people parking down there, moving cars around. They work at the various stores around there. I know that. It just happens. But, we need to come up with a system that kind of polices that better. And I think that, I know, Audrey, you've been talking about some different ways of doing that. But the systems we have today for monitoring parking, we're kind of behind the curve a little bit.
I guess, also, if you leave it as is, we have no ability to enforce anything.
I agree.
Right, that's what I'm saying, like
agree.
to leave it, we have to have some kind of a.
Enforcement, something to enforce.
We should
Totally
really
agree.
start talking about this every time the restaurants come in when we do the Vittler's licenses or the liquor
Yep.
licenses, we should start trying to, because we do this with them, we put the day sailors through this like
I totally agree.
big
This-
thing, and we should start talking about it.
Yeah, I don't want to pick on just the day sales. I want
Right.
to pick on, I said the businesses around the harbor. This is
See, and
this is an
Come in for their license
It's a good
renewals.
point. I like that idea.
One thing I can say about the restaurants is that, after 3 o'clock, it's open parking,
Yep,
because it's 2-hour parking, nobody comes and gives you a ticket at 5 o'clock.
that's,
So that's standard operating procedure. So after 3 o'clock, parking lot's open. And if.
For better or for worse,
Yeah.
Taylor, do you have something?
but not sorry.
Yeah, I'm curious what the length of discussion and what everybody feels about getting rid of this section entirely.
That would be option 4 that I was alluding to.
Just my general feeling is, without, getting discussion, I know that's already been had at some of the committee meetings, but I think that in terms of being reasonable, like working out the bench thing, I think that if inclement weather or an emergency happened, I would hope that the harbor master would say, yeah, there's a space here, you're not supposed to park there, but let's take care of what we need to take care of. I just feel like this whole thing becomes easier if this paragraph goes away altogether. I realize that may not be a popular opinion, but I'm throwing it out there.
It's no, Taylor, it sounds like you're saying there's already a rule about 2-hour parking, and if it's silent, that's the enforcement.
Well, I am saying that.
Or,
I don't think the employees there should should use the 2-hour parking, though.
So then that's option 2. And then we just make it not July and August. I guess what I'm saying is, but then I see what you're saying, but then we still have every other business owner and their employees down there who we don't regulate.
We just need to have metered parking down there.
Right. I guess for the purposes
How long
of
are we gonna talk about
simplifying
this?
this and realizing that we may address parking in general at the town landing from a much bigger view in the future, perhaps the not too distant future, I wonder if nixing this paragraph altogether makes this a lot easier for everybody.
option 4. Ramiro, go ahead.
We agree, we all agree. I think I'm talking for all of them. I mean, we kind of been talking a lot about this parking issue, and I think what I'm saying, reflects everybody. But the parking is definitely a problem. The option 2 of July and August, it wouldn't work for us because July and August is actually really our busiest time.
Sure.
And all of us, we do charters and we do a lot of big groups and we bring food back and forth. And so it will be very helpful to have on those 2 months actually a parking space to bring food and supplies and back and forth into the boats. Also, and when there is stormy weather, is also a shelter for our ticket sellers, they can actually come when the thunderstorms comes in, to be able to come into
You in the harbor master's office when it rains?
No, not really, no.
Can
Can I finish
There when it rains.
Please finish.
So the other issue that we have is also for emergencies, like in any emergency we have on the boat, it will be nice to have a vehicle ready to take any of our passengers or anybody for help. Also, there's 7 permits on the town right now, and so we take 7 parking spots, and we're very active. The fisherman area has 9 parking spaces. There's only maybe 1 or 2 full-time fishermen on town, and the other ones are not full-time. And there is actually a reserved and exclusive parking space for 9 fishermen on the town, and I guess nobody talks about that.
No.
Considered getting into the fishing business?
We haven't.
No, I'm not. But I'm saying that,
Again,
and we're not
Incentivize it.
asking for exclusive parking either.
No.
But I think the parking issue is way beyond our 7 spots. It involves all of the business around the area, all the restaurants, all of the merch, everybody in the area. So I think trying to get rid of our parking permits.
Yeah.
Of course, it's easier for the town to do it because you have control of that, but you can get rid of like that. But I think it's a big picture that you have to
Agreed.
look at it.
Mark? Thank you, Ramiro. Thank you.
Listening to everything that's going on, I think I tend to lean towards leave it as is, simply because their businesses are unique. They're not there 24 hours a day, so they can come in and load in at 5 a.m. or something like that. So having that access to load stuff in is unique. But overall, I think leaving it like that, the other thing we need to do is look at all of the parking. And the fishermen, everything else in town, how we handle parking for the whole town.
Like 20 studies in the folders in the town office.
I know.
They study it to death, and it just always ends in the status quo.
Fisherman parking has been brought up at the committee, and
Yep.
that's on our work plan.
Well, I was going to point out, remember that one of the next steps, next 2 steps will be windjammers and commercial fishermen. There are
Right.
2 addendum that we haven't done yet. So this starts here. This starts here. We can go leave it as is,
So where do
but
you draw the line?
that kind of, this is the narrow end of the funnel. So you got to decide whether we want to put our foot down with parking at this point or just let it be the way it is for all commercial windjammers and everybody else. That's where we're going at. So we don't have to close on it right now, but I think there are 4 options, and the fourth one being just nothing at all in terms of talking about parking. Because there is, to Taylor's point, there is already a 2-hour enforcement. It's supposed to be 2-hour enforcement no matter what down there. But if we're going to start with anybody, it's not just day sailors, it's windjammers, it's commercial fishermen, it's businesses around the harbor. This is a problem in Camden, and we have to deal with it.
What's the deal with the wagon that is there? So
Wagon?
it's like a,
The hot dog wagon?
no,
Hot dog wagon.
definitely not a, more like, yeah.
All right, one person at a time, please.
Yeah, that's,
I just want to say,
Is that somebody's vehicle, or looks like a supply cart of some
it's a
sort?
supply cart for the main Windjammer cruises, which
Right.
is Ray Williamson's, the
Right.
green boats. And I think that's a grandfathered concept, this is my understanding, that he gets it during the fit-out season, but I don't know.
Windjammer is
And then it
downstream.
stays for a little
so,
too
yeah,
long.
let's not go
Right.
into the
I just wanted
Windjammer.
to see, it's, I have no way of knowing it is a windjammer thing if it's.
One point, and this is just me sticking my neck out for myself in this situation. Aaron is blessed to rent a space down near the landing for his business. So
Right.
his booth is all stowed right there. And the Surprise and the Lively Lady each have little lockers, if you will, for their booth setup. But every morning I'm
Where are
driving.
their lockers? At Aaron's?
No, they're attached to the side of the harbor master's shack.
What?
They're built right onto it.
Lockers? Is that part of the
Mini
agreement?
lockers.
Is that part of the agreement?
No.
It was agreed to, I think, by Steve years ago.
But you don't have one.
No, and I'm not saying I need one, but I am saying it plays into my parking issue because every
Right.
morning I have to drive my booth down there. I set it up,
Lockers.
and so if then I have to drive to the police or to the fire station to do the all-day parking, and then I walk down, and then I have to walk back, and I have to drive back down, pick up my booth. I don't know. It adds a
No,
logistical
I understand. I personally
step
would love
my
to have
day.
a locker down there too, because I take all my camera equipment, and maybe we could sell lockers.
Anyway,
Maybe we could
I
take
just
some.
needed to throw
That's.
that
Thank
out
you
there
for
for
bringing that
myself.
up.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Mark, is there anything? Go ahead, please.
Lockers.
I'd just like to rest my case on how complex this parking issue
Yeah,
has
of course it
been.
is. Of course it is. And as we go forward, the select board has to make a decision on whether we put our oar in the water, literally, on parking now or not. And it starts here.
It does start here,
Okay.
and this
Chat
is,
with the community for a week or so, and then.
Well, again, remember, this is a great, you can see some of the conundrums that are going on, and what the objective would be we got December 3rd and December 17th, 2 dates we have for select board meetings in December, and we really need to, in fairness to in this case, the day sailors, to get them something in their hands before January 1st so they can, decide to stay with business in Camden or not. And I'm sure and hope they will. But the point is, that would be the objective. So we do have some time to mull on this. And I'm hoping everybody's getting a great understanding of some of the challenges that we face here. They are, the insurance thing, we're going to evaluate with the insurance carriers. Great question. And then there were the 3, I believe, that are in here, which is the fees for the or a la carte, or whatever those 3 options are increase or whatever. 2 is the ticket sales in terms
sounds
of.
like we've resolved
It
that.
seems like it. You leave as is.
Yeah,
It sounds like that's good. So the only one that seems to, only other one that I can. Well, there's a 4th one. Take my name off this one too. But and seriously, the one that's of more concern is this. The parking issue is huge. We
Fees,
get
parking, insurance.
That's got it. That's it. Those are the 3 decisions we'll have to close on, hopefully by December 3rd.
Took a couple parking spots and converted them into like a mobile locker system.
Well, and
A lot of people would pay for a locker down there.
Maybe.
you see that, and that's the other thing.
Yeah.
If I talked about the à la carte, but that was everything. But the other option would be just, okay, if these parking spaces are really so valuable, charge for a parking space.
That's where that would feed back to the à la carte thing. It does feed back to that. I would agree.
But, yes, but it wouldn't be necessarily the whole à la carte with the
Right.
tables. And
Right,
you
right.
know.
Right, it's almost like the opposite of à la carte. It's pulling it apart, and
Yeah, maybe.
An option only.
The only
I don't know what à la
concern,
carte means,
Yeah.
but
concern that I would have, and that has come up on that, is if you sell a parking slot to one person, why can't you sell it to another person?
Like a restaurant owner.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would agree.
it's always going to be the favorite. Well, we've already decided they're special, so that's why.
So we have to resolve these issues going forward. We'll have some discussions and do what we have to do. But the only other document in here that we haven't discussed yet is the second boat addendum, which is also in here, which is rather brief, by the way. It's for the second boat
Thank
addendum
you.
thing.
The second boat addendum.
Yeah,
yes.
one minute. We're going to hold for a minute. We're going to get through this, and then we'll come back to comments at the end.
One of the people we haven't heard from yet.
I know, I know. We'll get to him in a second. But let's finish the addendum discussion because that should be a quick one. There's no change
It
from
would be
before?
interesting just to
Second
put this
vote
all out to
addendum
bid and see what
is-
kind of responses
I
we
would
get.
agree with you. I would agree.
Just out of
I would
curiosity.
agree. Any comment on the, is this second boat addendum the same as we've had
Pretty much the
before?
way it operates now. What this does, the second boat's addendum says that there is no parking for the second boat downtown.
Gentlemen,
All right, it says that you can only sell tickets from the ticket table for the first boat.
got it.
And it also says that you have to have the first boat in operation in order to sell tickets
Okay.
for a second boat.
Okay. In this agreement, it talks about an additional fee of, has that been established?
No, that has not. It has been $500, which general consensus is that is extremely low.
Does the committee have a recommendation?
No.
They haven't talked about fee. It's
Our-
not that you
our
don't have a
fees-
recommendation.
Our fees will be, our fees will be discussed at the next Harbor Committee.
Okay,
meeting.
that was my next question.
When
Maybe-
is the next meeting?
December.
December 3rd,
Okay, so that's
3rd or 4th.
the
Fourth.
day after our select board meeting. So that doesn't help us get this done
On the 3rd, no.
by
I
the,
thought we only needed it by January 1st.
Yeah, that's true. We could do it the 17th, which is the last select board meeting of the year. That's possible, but you just really like to hear the committee's recommendations on whatever on the fee structure. I know it's much more pervasive than just these two fees. Also, there's this thing about à la carte, and it gets rather confusing when you start thinking about what would you propose for the à la carte dollar-wise? Is it $5 for a parking space or is it 500? I don't know. I just say that's.
Another thing to keep in mind, so we've been trying to be consistent and have a fee order for all the departments that charge fees for business activities that we bring to every year at the same time, which is, in preparation for the budget.
Yep.
So I think it would be good to know from all of you, do you want to hear what their proposal is and have a chance to mull that over before we come back with a fee order for adoption?
You mean the 17th?
For parking?
Everything.
Well, the committee has already voted and recommends not changing the parking.
Understood. So there's no à la carte. You're not recommending à la carte.
and I agree with that.
All right, well, we'll vote on it when we get to the select board meeting for that. But I think you've done a great job of here, by the way, come back to the start of this thing. This whole concept, I think, is great. And I do agree with some of the comments made by the captains here that, some of the stuff is pervasive beyond just the day sailors. That should be understood. This is not just about the day sailors. Windjammers, Steamboat Landing, and all those pieces, they're going to have to be all looked at the same way, level playing field. So that's a given. But I think. Well,
There is no level playing field.
Well, if it's a commercial boat, we're operating on a Steamboat Landing, they have to follow the same, if
Okay,
there is. I
it
don't
just
know if
really
there is.
all depends on what, we're not.
Absolutely depends, yeah. The only person who didn't get a chance to talk was Dominic. Do you want to say something, Dominic?
Yes. Dominic Joya, I've got the motor vessel Lively Lady. I just want to emphasize that it is a very unique situation that we have down there. Not having an actual place to store things as far as an office or a building or anything like that, makes it quite challenging in all different matters. A lot of us are family businesses. Just, regarding the parking spot, my wife, she actually had to pump for both of our children while she was working in her vehicle. We had to bring our kids, I've driven the boat with both of my, children as infants strapped to our back, or she's had them at the ticket booth. There's no changing station down there. So
Not even in the public landing restrooms?
There isn't. So we change diapers in our cars.
I think there's a changing table. There's a changing table in the.
The sinks in there, there's nothing.
The sinks, but if anyone's seen the sinks in there during August.
All right.
There's no changing table in the ice.
So that's where we use our cars. But anyways, it's just
I agree with
very
you, Dominic.
unique situation with
It's
a lot of different matters, with the whole umbrella of this.
Yeah, it's understood, Dominic. Understood. Thank you.
Can you just,
Go ahead.
how much square footage do you need? Like, what would be enough to make a big difference? If it weren't a car, like just for, a small amount of storage. Do you have a locker?
Yeah, well, I asked Steve for one.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I could build something that blends right in. And it's just so we can stick the table and the umbrella in there.
So Steve grants permission to build things onto the Harbor Master Shack?
He did, yeah, this was
Okay.
years ago. But he thought, when he said it, he was under the impression that the booth was getting ripped down the next year. He said it's only going to be there for a year.
Yeah.
That was
yeah.
5 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
That was, I guess, apparently.
He's really made that thing last.
Thank you, Dominic. We're not going to debate. We're not
Or
going
like a cubby?
We're not going to debate lockers here tonight.
It's a unique situation.
There's no excuse for the walker that, we can fit all,
Right.
just this big around,
Right.
like these.
Right.
I'm just wondering if we actually built some, took a couple of parking spots and actually built something, then.
Where, Mark, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, I don't think a locker is enough to give them what they need in terms of safety of employees and all of that. Again, the regular employees at one of the stores, if there's lightning and thunderstorm outside, they're in the store. This is a special circumstance, and I think we need to understand
I
that.
just understood. Jeff, I really need to move on. This better be really important.
It is to me very much.
Some of us enjoy this conversation. I think
Yeah,
it's.
I know. I just want to stay on that.
You
agreement.
don't, but
Sorry.
it's.
Jeff Beck, Sloop Heritage. Under the old agreement, the fees were due on May 1st, half on May 1st, half on August 1st or 15th. So it was May and August.
Split payment.
Split payment. It didn't start until the beginning of the season.
Right.
Under the new write-up, I see it's written that the fees for, even in the day sailor addendum, it would be due January 1st. I have a very small operation.
Okay.
This is my scramble time of the year for money, which, I'll make it work if I have to, but if I have to put $2,500 out January 1st, it would be
I think
a
we
little
can-
bit of a
We
kick in
can,
the
we can
pants.
certainly take a look at the cash flow.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem, Jeff. Thank you. Mark, that's something we should take a look at. I agree. The town doesn't need the cash flow from the day sailors on January 1st, I don't think, to make our payments.
doesn't make a
So we
difference
can
for us.
probably work with them on some kind of reasonable
Doesn't
payment
make a
schedule.
difference for us.
Right?
It does, yeah, it makes no difference to the town.
I would agree. I would agree. I would have thought that payment schedule would have been similar to the last agreement. That's just my opinion.
Sure.
I'm looking at the
Well, let's
previous
ju-
day sailor agreement, and I don't find that here.
I didn't see that either, to tell you the truth, but whether it's there or not, we'll make sure it's corrected. And,
We need to work on that.
Like with taxes.
and we can work that out. That's not, we don't need your cash flow to keep the town alive. We just want to get you signed up by January 1st for 3 years, right? Right. Oh, sure. Great discussion, but we'll probably close this on, I'm guessing, the 17th, Audra?
Yes.
After the Harbor Committee has a discussion, but we need to think about, most importantly, it seems to me, we need to think, the select board, when there's 5 of us in particular here, we can talk about this issue of the parking thing, because it's pervasive. It's not just these great gentlemen here. It's about a cross-section of a problem we have in the town.
Just the general use of the public landing.
Yeah, it is.
Space.
Yes.
It's going to be.
Yes.
I mean, whether we should be even allocating that much of it for parking is another
Question.
question.
Yeah, I would
And it's
agree.
all going to, it's at least as at risk of
Yeah.
sea level rise,
Yeah.
you know, as
Yeah.
Harbor Park. It's
Yeah.
not a sustainable long-term plan. We're going to have to massively redesign that. And do we always want to devote it all to parking?
So one other issue about this is the fact that there is an annual review
Yes,
for this agreement.
in the master
So
agreement.
if you make a mistake the first year,
We can change it.
correct it.
Yep,
So.
yep, understood. Mark, great job, thank you.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
a lot,
thank you
Mark.
for
Appreciate it.
doing this.
Thank you, Elliot.
And the vice chair, thank you too. Thank you. On to the discussion and approval of the Snow Bowl concession license for,
I just have one general.
Go ahead.
Can I say?
Yeah, you can.
Why do we make all the restaurants say what their like gross annual revenue is? That's for the liquor. Is that just for liquor?
I believe it is only for liquor, but I don't even know why we do it there.
Because it would be, we don't make the,
There's no
like,
distinction.
should we make the windjammers and the daysailers
No,
do that
yeah,
too, or
I really don't know.
determine
I
the-
think it should be deleted.
That's a main.
never fact check it, or,
No, why would we? They could lie to us, we don't know. I don't,
I think that's a state thing for liquor. It's not in our regular agreements.
really? Anyway.
okay.
But I agree, I don't see why we have that on there. Thank you all, thanks for coming, guys. The agreement for the Camden Snowball Food Concession, it's basically, jumping ahead here a little bit, but basically the same except for a couple of changes?
Yes, the only
Go ahead, Audra.
Only one change, and that would be on, sorry, I'm trying to find it. That is
21.
Hello,
Page
Mark
4
Sanders,
of the
Bagel
agreement.
Cafe. Yeah, the only change would be in addition to what we've been doing is a food trailer on the property.
That's Article 21.
Yep. I've
The last
discussed it
article.
with Beth, I've discussed it with Tom, have a plan of where to put it, all the logistics around it, and it seems very easy to do.
Yep.
Where's it going to go?
It's going to go right in between the chairlift and Side Country Sports trailer. So that would be the chairlift. That's the maintenance building. There's a bit of a ravine in that drainage. We put it right in between there.
Is the idea that people can just grab a bite without getting off their skis kind of thing?
Yeah, or they'll probably get off their skis, but yeah, stay outside, stay out of our small lodge.
Which, show me again?
See, that's the maintenance building.
Right,
That's the chairlift.
right.
The lodge is to the
And
left.
that's Side Country Sports, so kind of right in between,
So,
right on the
okay.
side.
Almost where you were setting it up for.
Yeah, it's a little bit out of the way, more
But you're-
so than before.
That's where you set it up when we were doing the chairlift things in the fall.
Hold on, why don't we grab your mic? I don't know how.
Yeah, we're going to
Yeah,
lose
that
you if you
works really
don't
well.
stay at the mic, Mark,
Bruce is,
please.
thank you, Bruce.
Just take it with you if you want. I have two questions on the Article 21. One is, well, when you say trailer, I don't even know what, I think of.
It's a food trailer, 8x14. It's trailed. It's basically a nice covered trailer, both a hood and service windows.
Is one
No
re-
motor in it.
Wheels?
Yep.
All right.
Dual axle.
Okay, but the other, the only most cogent point is approved by whom? It says the food service in an approved temporary structure. Who's
Oh, by Dean, by yeah, thank you.
What?
the what?
HS. The Dean, he does the food and restaurant inspections locally.
He's going to
For the
approve it.
state?
Yeah, just like a victualer's license, just like my other license, I'm going to have him look at it, say I can do food
You're
through
talking
it.
about a trail that has been improved by a licensing entity.
Exactly.
Okay, you're not talking about the town approving or somebody in the town approving the temporary structure.
No, you're just approving me using the structure there.
I get it. And I read it as somebody in the town, like Beth, somebody,
Right.
or us or whoever, was approving this temporary structure.
No, you're just approving the usage. I would be licensed and approved via,
I'm curious about what would be served and offered at the trailer.
just a variety of things. I mean,
Different from-
basically food.
Different from inside?
Yeah, just to be, just spread from our menu from inside. Specialty items,
switch it up here and there. Kind of got to see how it goes first to really pinpoint.
Right, so a person goes up to this, like a food truck, they go up
Yeah.
go up to this thing and say, I'm going to have a blank, and you.
Right.
and
Well,
you
we'll
serve.
basically, it'll be roped off. So there's a little area for service, a little, some picnic tables. It'll be a shared area with Side Country Sports so they can do their demos and stuff.
Oh, I see.
And so it'll be an area actually that people can like take their skis off, put them in the snow and mingle and hang out. Last year, there was a little miniature park that was there. That's not going to be there this year. And it's going to be a lot more open terrain. We're going to spread out downhill. So when we have so much, it won't be spread across.
Will there be any seating in this?
We'll have a couple picnic tables that we have now, and, depending on size and whatever, maybe we get more, maybe we don't.
But they could go up on the deck and eat the food too, of course.
Right, of course.
It seems like a good opportunity for lots of like debris flying all around and.
Compared to me working out of a tent, it's going to be a lot less debris.
Compared to a tent?
Yeah,
Why are we comparing it to a tent?
because that's what I was doing last year,
I thought you were in the lodge.
and outside.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like great necessary. I mean,
Great.
I don't think it's been, I mean, it's always an issue when things are outside. It's not like you've been worse than anything else. It's just always it comes down to people being responsible, and, we'll have to have a trash can over there and.
Oh, I hope. Yeah.
And I'm happy to pick up and, police the area too.
Mark?
I think, I understand, and I think having, really strong examples of trash cans and not overflowing, available thing. I think that the necessity of it, though, is, we've all been there when the line for food goes out the
In
door.
that lodge, yeah.
I don't
There's just
either.
not the capacity inside for the demand for food.
Yeah.
So.
Or for a lot of demands all
Yeah,
around.
so,
Right.
which is great for you,
it's
that it's a good business, but I think it's something that's necessary, because if we want people to be skiing, the fact that they're spending a half an hour, 40 minutes in line for food is just not productive. So I understand that, but looking at the overall picture, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Could the window be facing I was just thinking about like the line, and, because there probably will be.
Which line?
There will sometimes be a line for, and if it gets long and, like, is the window going to be facing the park?
There's going to be
Or
two
toward
windows,
the-
I hope. I don't have this
Oh.
trailer yet, but it'll be, forward facing where it is, and then another one up by the chairlift. And if I do a line,
Oh.
it'll be
Oh,
wrapped and around, and it'll be within a fence, because I can't have a line
right.
there while there's skiers, I have to
that-
have an
yeah,
uphill
good,
blockage.
I just want it to be, I guess, rather than us trying to micromanage, like, this is where I want you to tilt it this way or that way, that it be really clear that it's all, at any time, Beth can say, we need you to change the way you're doing this. We need you to move drainage or this, whatever unforeseen issues, it can't be like, well, it says right here, I have the right to, put a structure wherever, and.
No, we're going to
but
keep that line of
just work.
communication open. The issue will be if we get dumped on. I mean, that he wouldn't be able to pull it out after 3 feet of snow.
Right. But you guys will just deal with that and figure it out.
We're going to deal with it.
And if we need to move it, we need to move it. Once again, my contract's year to year. This is something we
Yeah,
can.
we can play with.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah,
So we
understood.
can say, we didn't like it, or hey, we liked it.
Yeah.
I think it's a very great way to expand
Yeah, I
without.
agree. I agree.
Without a big to-do and a big footprint.
Taylor, do you have any comment, Taylor?
Nope, I like the idea. Take it positive.
Mark, go ahead.
Just a couple questions about, how did the fall, October, because you were selling food out there, burgers that looked really incredible, and you closed up by the time I got back down the mountain.
Yeah, it went really well. That was the busy day.
Yeah.
Sorry. It went really well. And it went well because we have the Scuttle, we have Trail Fest, and then we have that. So it's like a consistent batch of weekends that we're doing stuff.
So the
And it-
outside food service has been, even though obviously different conditions, it's been
Right.
very productive.
Very productive.
And did we have any trash problems or anything during that time?
Not that I know of at all.
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
Worry a little bit about the chairlift.
Do we
Just the tendency of people to grab something and then go and get on the chairlift and
throw
they,
stuff?
yeah, I mean, that is an area where trash already accumulates, and I think the tendency to be able to just grab and go and keep, rather than sitting down somewhere, but
Yeah.
I remember when Brian did it, he was really, with that thing on the mountain, it was like this really meticulous thing where you had to eat there and, you know, leave all your stuff there, and I'm not necessarily saying we need to police that part of it at this point, but I
Yeah.
see the potential for it being.
Well,
And if,
we'll have to
you know,
continue to
Stonewall
monitor
staff
it.
can just figure out what, monitor that.
We could make it real easy that, you know, there are people monitoring people getting on the chairlifts and have them not take, you know,
Well,
food on the
there
chairlift.
are people carrying their own food from home on the chairlifts. and I've
Right,
seen
yeah,
that
I still want to be able to have a
oftentimes,
granola
so-
bar, but,
It's an easy thing to police though too, where
Yep.
it's a single line, you
Yep.
ride over it, and
Yep.
then people go down it daily. So that, once again.
Well, clearly, it's one thing we should
We see it,
monitor.
we can
people
do
to
it.
just eat your stuff there and maybe for the most part, not just take a
Just
big
change the
thing of French
signature.
fries up on the,
Right.
you know.
Don't litter. Littering is bad.
Right, but it's setting yourself up for,
Bad.
I think it's the safety
Yep.
issue of being
Yep.
distracted on the chairlift too is.
I think perhaps a large sign that says $100,000 fine for littering.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Would solve the problem. And
No
I'm,
alcohol out there?
No, and alcohol too, within the fenced-in area.
Oh, there is going to be alcohol out there.
Yep.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion that we okay the agreement for Camden Snowball Food Concession for 2019-20, or is it 2020-21?
It's December 1st, 19.
19-20, okay.
Second.
One more discussion, that we are authorizing the town manager to sign it, not me. I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
Everybody's trying to promote me, you know? But anyway, that's just with that comment. Any other discussion? All's in favor? 4-0. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you,
Beth.
guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Definitely no, I mean, the alcohol, I don't love that, but
Plastic cups.
When we can
happened to
table
the-
number 7.
Okay, we are going to table item number 7, the confirmation appointment of Officer John Morgan.
I didn't even have that.
Move on to discussing the purchase of
threw it
new
in my
voting
head.
booths.
I don't know, if
Yes.
maybe I'm not opposed to it. I don't know.
Any discussion about the new voting booths?
So this has come up at the request of the town clerk. So apparently the voting booths we have now are about 20 years old. There's some issues with them where some of the shelves are broken on a number of them. Apparently the setup and takedown is quite cumbersome, and the storage is, it just requires a lot of area for them to be stored. So the town clerk looked into alternatives, and that's what you have in your packet here, which is apparently is a much more portable, easier to break down, set up,
Yep.
easier to
Oh,
store.
my, no curtain.
How many of these total, what's the budget?
Oh, I'm sorry, that I had
I
that in
didn't see,
there.
I saw that it cost $870 a pop, I think, for a 4-station.
879, I
So
think.
6 sets at 879, so that was, yeah.
Do we have it in the budget?
We do not have that in the budget right now.
And it
So
would
we
be,
would have to budget for it for the upcoming year, and we
Well,
wanted to discuss it now.
well, her memo says March for
It kind
the
of says
June
both.
election.
I don't like these at all.
Allison brought up a question. What about privacy?
You can buy curtains for it, I guess,
It's
but
not really set up that way. Like, how do I
don't know.
I don't like it.
Is there a real sense of urgency? That's kind of what I don't have an answer to.
Maybe we should all help set up this year. And
Actually, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree. Is that the problem, is setup time?
we should set up and we
Set
should
up.
take them down.
Breakdown, storage space.
And that'll be the compromise. We won't approve this tonight, but we will take responsibility for
And we can
set up
certainly-
and take down.
I do know, and talking to Katrina, that the two things coming up, for the first time, we're going to have a March presidential election, primary, instead of just a meeting, just a caucus, which will be extensive. And then, of course, this November, suspect, or a year from now, suspect that it will be a very, very busy situation.
Yeah, well, but
More reason for us
It's
to
for
help.
November, though.
Well,
go
November.
through the normal budget process and
Yes.
have it happen for November.
Exactly. We could wait for the next budget cycle to go for November.
And get
For
general
March, you
election.
can't. For March,
Yeah, I
you can't.
mean, I'd say that's, there was a
Primary.
hope that maybe there would be enough of a sense of urgency to do it for March, but I think that I'd recommend that we go through the normal budget process if you'd like to do this at all.
I think we should look
Maybe
at
the
it.
more expensive ones that can preserve
Yeah.
the format. Maybe the budget committee wants to weigh in on, you know what, it's worth it to us to preserve the curtain that I can bring my kids in and.
I think you're right. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking November. I forgot about the March primary, which is going to be principally a Democratic thing because the Republicans are probably not going to have a lot of options. So it's going to be heavy on the Democratic side. But I think the real big thing is going to be November. And I would agree. Let's look through the budget cycle, but doing something great for November of 2020.
But we also, I think, should commit to helping in March because
Done.
I do feel,
Consider it done.
they do work really hard. and
Really
I've seen
too
she,
hard.
like-
Really too hard.
Well, and also to
I feel
give
like-
everybody a better idea of what it entails.
I
and-
agree. I
That's a good
agree.
idea.
I agree.
I am curious to know what alternatives, because in looking at that, I'm concerned, like Allison was, about the privacy. That seems to be an issue, because I think people are,
Yeah.
they want that
Yeah.
privacy.
Yeah.
I move to table this discussion.
Well, we will. I agree. I think we should table it. We'll look at and agree just to look at in the budget cycle for 2020, and maybe not just this option, and probably not just this option, and qualify to what Allison said. Yeah, we'll help out in March.
For setup and takedown.
Both. And I'll
The minute should reflect
morning
that,
and
so we
night.
don't forget.
all the vote counting.
And Audrey, you should remind us at least 2 weeks ahead of time that we.
Please do.
A calendar invite.
Yeah, please raise the flag early. Okay, that issue is tabled. On to.
And actually, it's interesting, I believe that will be the night of our proposed select board meeting. Is it the second or first Tuesday in March? Do we know?
We haven't got there yet.
Don't know.
You got it right there.
The election?
Yeah, but when's the election?
No, not the
20th.
primary's not on here.
All right. Let's move on to looking at the.
Yes, sorry.
until, for the next budget cycle, is that what it is?
That's correct.
Okay.
And looking at a variety of options.
I
and
would like
costs.
to have more information on
Options.
options for the booths. Yep.
On to a discussion of the select board meeting guidelines, which we did approve in July of this year. And I believe the discussion is focused on looking at the agenda distribution or other matters. If anybody wants to discuss them also, that's fine. But I believe the principal focus was looking at the requirements for agendas transmitted to, item D, I believe, is the focus. D is in dog.
Well, I mean, I think maybe any number of things. I think
Okay.
we possibly or I can speak for myself, that clearly I didn't look at this carefully enough, or with enough real-world experience, because when, we have this email list that, it was Janice that brought it to my attention that we set this policy every year, but she has taken the step as a courtesy to alert people that ask to be on a list when there are select board meetings. So she sends out an agenda and notices when there's a special meeting that wasn't planned for. But that's not what we've said needs to happen. And I think we've kind of taken it for granted. And, this idea that anybody would be expected to just check the town website to figure out if there's going to be some kind of a special meeting or the posting of agendas in a conspicuous location is, truly left over from the 1700s. That's what worked best. So I think we need to include language about email distribution.
Option. Yeah, so
And I
basically.
don't think we have today the perfect proposed language, but we should talk as a group a little bit about anything that we would like to see in there, and then we can work on
Okay, so
change language for next time.
basically, as I hear is discussion about expanding D to include beyond it says it's transmitted to local newspapers by the close of Friday, blah, blah, blah.
It's in a few places, I think.
town also, I'm not trying to put the exact words in, but basically, we do have this email option which anybody can opt into for getting distribution on agenda, as we're kind of trying to do now. And that's where that's really the intent of that part of the policy, to expand it to that regard. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
I'd see it be more concise too. I think like posted in a few prominent locations is just, I think we could get rid of it entirely. Like,
No, that's
I think there's just a way to
required
make it more
that's required by
concise.
state statute.
Okay. But does, worded like that, state statute says posted in a few prominent locations, I find that hard to believe.
They should specify the locations.
There's some stuff that's in our charter.
Is this in the charter?
I can't remember.
I don't remember either. But the good point, we can take that into account. But I'm trying to understand let's assume that we get this correct by state statute. I'm not sure it is either. But the policy would be modified just to reflect this email option, and then let the town manager and staff determine and monitor and manage that process as part of our commenting to others, or distributing to others the agenda.
I didn't understand that. What do you mean?
Well,
Let the town manager what?
This D doesn't mention anything about sending emails to residents who request to get this distribution, right?
Right.
So we're going to add that.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm not trying to use the exact words. I'm just trying, that's the intent. All right. Is there anything else we want to add in this?
I mean,
Or not?
I'm just going to say, because this has been done since the 1700s or something, are we nailing a copy to the tree out in the village green to make sure that we cover?
I think it's like there was stuff about the post office and the bulletin board and.
Times have changed.
I mean, there are so many things that come up. Like, for example, when we say, okay, send things out to the newspapers. Well, what does that mean? When we choose which newspapers, and this gets into more of like a public, even with the public hearings, and I think a part of what we need to look at is how do we want how is it reasonable for the public to receive information? And even just with our public hearing notification process, is what do we do for those things when we say there has to, public notice in a newspaper of general circulation, for example, I think is one of the things that we have to adhere to. That's a law that we have to adhere to, but we as a board can make some
Go above and beyond.
we can go above and beyond, or we can decide what we think is, what do we do? Do we just do the Camden Herald? Is that what is the Free Press? Is the Bangor Daily News? Is it fair to make people get information from a service they have to pay for?
Right. But you're talking about beyond paragraph D.
Well, it says the select board, paragraph D, a draft agenda will be transmitted to the local newspapers by close of business on Friday. So do we want to talk about what that means? What does it transmitted to the local newspapers? When we say let the media know, what does that mean to us? I don't know I don't even know what the general practice has been.
I don't know that we should say newspapers anymore, news organizations would be more, because it's not all papers, but I would include
Exactly, that's
our
one.
local, we have 3 local places. We have Village Soup, Penn Bay Pilot, and the Free Press. I think those are. It's Village Soup, that's Village Soup.
All right, excuse me.
So I would, I would recommend in news organizations, those are our local ones. And then, if people want to find out what's available, they can do it. One thing that we also have coming is we have a new website coming. Do we have a timeline on that yet?
No.
Okay, so that's coming as well. I mean, I think this is all based on, because of a change in the way state notified people. Some people missed the notification because we didn't realize there had been changes in state things. And,
No, it's not. It's a lot more. It's a lot more than that. And I don't believe that the Free Press is included a lot of the time in the general notifications that go out.
do we know?
No.
They're not notified.
So it really puts, I think, Janice in an uncomfortable.
Publication.
But that doesn't, they're probably, because of the free availability of it is probably more read by more people and different people than Penn Bay Pilot and Camden Herald.
Definitely. I mean, so I think this is exactly the kind of conversation that we should be having, because it gets to an assumption thing, and it's just Janice doing her best all the time. And she normally just does it so well that it doesn't come up. But it's been a long time since we've actually said what we think should happen. And I think maybe we should ask a few people in the community, because
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt. We should ask the media.
In order to also, when we, well, who are we going to ask in
That's
the
a
media
good point.
then?
Yeah, that's a good
Is
point.
faxing
The
appropriate?
gentleman standing at the.
One second. I'm just trying to get back to a fundamental question, and it is right now that D reads only about agenda. Okay, it doesn't talk about other meetings or other whatever the heck. It only talk, is that what we're focusing on, just agenda? Or not? Well, just a basic question.
Maybe it should say meeting notices and draft agenda.
So we want
Select board
this
meeting
more
notices
pervasive than just
and
agenda.
draft
I think
agenda.
there is another level that needs to be dealt with at some point as well, in terms of how do we like advertise our public hearings and things like that, because it's huge amounts of money, first of all. And sometimes if it's only in the Camden Herald, as wonderful as they are, you also have to pay for that service. And but let's just stick to agendas for the time being. But my overall point is that it's not sufficient. I don't believe that what we're doing now is, generally sufficient, and that we need to do better.
Okay, I agree. So I'm trying to think of
Should we-
action.
Should we task Audra to work with Janice to come up with more modern recommendations on notifying people and language covering, maybe more varied news organizations and ways for people to get notified? Because we can go around all night long and spend hours
That's
here.
what I'm trying to focus on, what we want to try.
Maybe if you were to come back with us with recommendations.
Well, we have to do something.
Sure, if she has, I think if Jenna were here, she would want to talk about it more, and it would be more.
Do you want to table to the 3rd?
Well, let's hear what Mark has to say.
It's not that complicated. It's pretty simple. Let's just do what you said.
I think it could,
I agree with
yes, we should do what I said, but there should be, okay, so what's sufficient notice? When we decide we want to have a special meeting, then what do we collectively think is reasonable if we're going to be deciding something? How should people be?
But that's dictated by state statute.
No, it isn't.
No?
Well, Allison is saying you as a group can go above and beyond that.
Yeah, that I agree with.
Yes,
That
I guess
agree with.
that's exactly what I'm saying, is that we should not do the bare minimum that is legal.
Well, and as long as you don't get in an emergency situation where you have to move on something tomorrow and you can't do it because you handcuffed yourself.
Right, well, we should, as a group, that's why it's a policy that as a group, we kind of agree on, this is how we're going to generally operate. If we think 6 hours is enough and just because the day sailors are upset about something, is that an emergency? I don't know. It's not.
Well, it's a good judgment call. You're right.
I mean, that's different. That is different than D, though.
I've seen emergency and special and all of that be really misused in other boards.
I think so, but if we needed to replace the boiler tomorrow, well, like happened a couple of years ago, and we had to meet tomorrow to authorize somebody to spend $60,000 to do it, some of this comes to judgment. Basically, we're required to do certain things by state statute, whatever that says, and I'm not an expert on it. But we'd have no problem at all going above and beyond. And we could say things like, in general, we will give 48 hours notice or something like that. That's okay, but you got to give yourself the flexibility to be able to operate on demand.
That's fine, but if we decide to have a special meeting, I think that, right away an email should go out to.
Yep. Yeah, that's all part of it, I think. But back to Mark's point, I agree. If we don't draft something to use as a draft, we can sit and talk about this all night. But I think we agree that we can do more.
We can.
Totally.
But I think that we need to, give them an option, give them the chance to work it up and come back to us with it the next meeting.
I agree.
With some suggestions of proper verbiage. And you and Jenna can work with Audra and/or Janice or whoever's going to be involved, whoever Audra decides to get involved with it, so that,
It'll be Janice.
yeah,
Of
so there'll be
course,
some
of course.
recommendations. Otherwise, we're just going to go around, we all agree.
I agree.
We just need to,
But Mark, you've been standing there for half an
That
hour.
isn't reasonable. That's not a reasonable way to get in touch with.
This is about the exact same amount of time we spent on Tuesday or whatever night it was, Thursday night, at the Charter Commission discussing what it says in the Select Board section of how they should notify meetings. So there's a section there that says what you're supposed to do.
That's right.
There's state law that says what you're supposed to do.
Correct.
There's what you guys have been just discussing that says what you're supposed to do.
Or want to do.
And none of it matches up to anything.
Right.
Okay? It's redundancy and overlap and
It's been fuzzy.
like I say, we had this same discussion Tuesday night.
Yep.
Or Thursday, whatever night we had that meeting.
Yep.
And this flows right into what you're about to talk about on your next item on the agenda.
Right.
Is what is actually being done and what ordinances or charters or state rules are saying, they don't match.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the charter, though, we're fulfilling the obligations of the charter
Right.
currently with our general practice.
Right.
It's just that the policy,
And
and this charter doesn't defy state law, I don't believe.
it quotes, it refers to state law constantly, and it's currently referring to state law that doesn't exist anymore because it's been amended or
Right.
eliminated.
Right.
Back to what Bob said about how you notify your meetings, keeping it as general as possible, because part of our discussion was, what if you have that emergency? And we discussed how with the vote on the harbor dredging,
Yeah.
and you continued the meeting to the next day, so Tyler could be here.
Taylor.
However you pronounce your name.
Whatever you want to say.
You know,
I'll
okay.
I'll
So
answer anything for you, Mark.
Yeah. And so, having said that, just trying to be specific in this newspaper, that newspaper, you can't do that because they're going to get sold, they're going to get bought, they're going to go out of business, there are going to be new forms coming in.
No, but this is
So-
just our policy that we set every year. That's why we would never put anything like that in the charter.
Yeah.
But when we talk about what makes sense this year in 2019 for our select board and the people that we represent, that's where this is the beauty of this document, is it's just an agreement really that we have with each other.
That's correct.
I think
Right.
sorry.
That's correct.
You vote on it every single year.
And we can change it whenever we want.
If we find there's a flaw in it, we'll change it again next year. But I think the smart play here is to go forward with, let's draft some kind of, I always use the wrong term, straw man, but that's not what it is, it's a draft to look at. I always use the straw man, it's the wrong term.
It is.
I know it is. I've used it wrong all my life. I'll never learn it. At my
late
age,
now,
at
Bob.
my age, you never learn.
Just stick with it.
So it's okay, Audra. Maybe we could develop.
I'll put
something.
together a straw man for you, don't worry.
Yeah, there you go. Either the 3rd or the 17th, we should address it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Great. Good. I agree. On to the
meeting calendar.
the select board discussion about the input to the Charter Commission. The Charter Commission has requested comments from any select board members in any areas that any person thinks they might look at. So what has existed on the, and then we've mentioned it before, on the shared documents thing is this document you're looking at here of suggested topics, which a few of us have put a few things on.
You did put it in the packet.
I
Okay.
did.
All right.
Well, you don't want to look at it?
I was like, I'm not sure if the edits that I made were really packet ready and the.
Oh, I was wondering where that bad language came from. I'm only
Yeah, I
kidding.
was like, I
No,
can't
I'm
remember
only
if I
kidding.
put any notes in there, like,
So
but that's
so
fine.
we have a couple of decisions. We don't have to send anything at all and say, no, this is your charter, commission, go for it. Or there are, 8 comments that were made here by a few of us.
What's the part about employees being bonded? Can someone help me with my ignorance on that?
So there's a section in there that it specifies that any employees who handle cash need to be bonded. And really our insurance policy covers that, so we don't need anything as specific as that. Like, it's just like a language tweak where it,
Okay.
yeah.
More housekeeping than anything.
Yeah, I don't know that any of these are, I've made a few and a few others have made a few, but I mean, the question is, the select board to you all is, do we want to forward this list? Or do we want to leave it open for others of us to comment on? But they have asked for it and we either say, here it is, or we're going to have it by December, whatever, or we're not going to do it. Those are the three decisions.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, you
I was just going to say, I reviewed the list beforehand, and I actually liked everything that was on here. And it's just it's suggested discussion. So
That's all it is.
I can.
the more I would rather start a little bit bigger and pare things down, particularly for something that doesn't happen as infrequently as a charter commission, once every 40 years or something like that. So I'd rather start big and whittle it down. But
Yeah, there's some substantive stuff in here. Some of these bullets are pretty substantive, but that's why we have the commission. They can throw them away, they can analyze and come back, as other previous charter commissions have done with letters of recommendation for change or not.
You want some comments now on?
Oh, no, if you want to add something to it, I suggest this is on the shared document drive under charter commission comments, and please add anything you deem. But it seems to me that if we're going to do it, we need to get it to them sooner than later, because this has been hanging for well over a month or two from their request.
Oh, I was going to say, at what point do they want us to, will we vote on the changes when how does it work? Do we vote on the changes they recommend? Do we discuss it?
no.
Oh, yeah, lots.
What?
Can we vote on it? I don't think so.
No.
We're definitely going to be talking about it, and then it's going to go to voters, and it's like.
It has to go to voters in the end, yes.
Right, but we will discuss it. before it goes-
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. That's not, we can't approve them, no.
No, but do
Obviously
we,
not.
is it
I
like?
do believe that we will vote on that as part of the process.
Well, yeah, you have to vote on the warrant.
Correct, on the warrant.
Right. There's a whole,
Oh, there is.
speaking of
There's a-
state law,
Present a report to you,
Yeah,
there's a
like a
whole
whole,
process.
There's a good example of it right now in the current charter that was written in 1997. But again, the issue of these comments, do we want to, one, respond? It sounds like we do. Two, when does anybody want any more input to this before we send this to the Charter Commission?
yeah, I have tons of input.
Okay. So when do you think
Can I give some of it right now?
sure?
That's what I wanted to do as well, because
He's
getting
trying
me
to-
on,
Yes, please.
getting me on the computer is
Please.
harder than.
Our next scheduled meeting is the 12th of January.
Thank you.
I want to read an editorial from 1984.
12th of December.
It's a Tuesday, correct?
December.
Can I just read, as I like to do, I've been doing research in the library and looking for the history of our dam agreement. And Ken Bailey, the former editor of the Camden Herald, they had a lot of really great stuff back then. And here I stumbled upon one from 1984 called Camden Has Its Time Passed? Camden, with its small town village appearance, is picking up some big city attitudes, the most dangerous, which is apathy. In 1982, 300 voters approved the municipal budget. In 1983, just under 200 voters approved the municipal budget. And this week, approximately 130 voters attended the annual town meeting to approve a budget of $1.5 million. Zoning changes, a new town charter, approval of new ordinances, and the acceptance of dams at McGonagall Lake, as well as other matters of importance. Those 130 voters, and what's funny is that there was also the new town charter at that point. Those 130 voters represent a paltry 4% of the town's registered voters. The town of Hope, with a population that is only about 20% of that in Camden, had more people attending its annual town meeting. What's wrong? Why do people stay away? The answers to these seemingly simple questions must be found, or this small town will lose more of its already fractured identity. Maybe the time has come to change to a manager-council type of government in Camden. We could save the expense and hassle of holding these annual meetings, where sparse groups are scattered through an empty auditorium. A council-manager government would only have to hold a public hearing on budgets and proposed ordinances. No one shows for those even now. And then vote the way they see fit at their next meeting. If 96% of the Camden voters don't care how their town is run or how their money is spent, we might as well make the change right now. Of course, there is a problem with this idea. In order to change to this type of government, we would have to hold a town meeting to approve of the idea. If that were done, only 4% of the regulars would show up and vote down the 96% who would probably stay home again. Who says a minority can't rule? The problem with a silent majority is that it is too silent.
What year is that from?
1984.
1984. Oh, what?
Yes, and then Taylor and I were born to try to solve everything.
One thing I would say about that, one thing I've seen in the last number of 3-4 years is last year, for instance, the town meeting was very well attended without some really controversial compared to years in the past. Absolutely.
Because we had gotten down so bad. I mean, they're lamenting 130 people here. We're now saying 130 is pretty good. Like,
we didn't have
previous years I've been there, absolutely was attended without there were no controversial.
I understand.
It was pretty. The other thing that was interesting, this past election, a couple weeks ago, had over 900 people voting, and there were only 3 things on the issue, only one of which dealt with the town. It was, we've seen better participation lately than we have previously.
It's actually just getting worse. I mean,
I don't agree with the town meeting. It's worse. I think the most I've seen since my tenure has been 60. It's been 60 at the town meeting in June. That was the most I've seen here. And what percentage of that is our population? 2%?
The most you've seen at the town meeting?
Yep.
We've had 3 or 4 years ago.
I wasn't there 3
4 or 5 years ago. The Opera House was packed.
Okay,
that was when I feel that, like, sorry to say, but that was a lot of effort to get all those people there, and it was because the snowball and the fiber aid eco-main thing, and Josh and I had to make a movie, and like there was but the fact is, I mean, I guess what I had heard is that and I was opposed to the Charter Commission, and I really still am, but because I think it's a huge it's a huge amount of work, and it's not the way it's normally done. It's not about too many typos. It's supposed to be a really hard look at whether we have the right type of government. And if you click on some of these, I know these are Massachusetts, but these recent Charter Commission reports, they really look at the heart of like how town government works and is it working for that community, and it's really thoughtful. And I have people, the reality is that the vast majority of people in Camden don't know how town government works. They have no idea what town meeting is. They have no idea how our budget gets approved.
True.
We also have a lot of people who show up on election day. There's a complicated ordinance amendment where we try to paraphrase it the best we can in a couple of sentences, and then we get people who are angry because they don't feel like they have enough information to vote, because they're required through the form of government that we have to be very actively involved in every single step of the decision-making process. And if they aren't, they are going to be uninformed when they show up at the voting booths to vote.
I'm also frustrated a lot of the time that the select board hasn't done certain things, that we haven't done all this. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to going to a council form of government. But the reason for that, if I really were to look at it, it's because I benefit from how the system works right now. I figured out how it works, and I know that anytime in the future, if I don't like something going on, I have the tools to just rile up a bunch of my friends and get them
to work it.
Right. And I think that's really the people that are the most involved right now enough to really be participating are sort of benefiting from the system because they know how it all works. And there are so many people that don't have time to be that involved, and they would just like to be able to follow the system where they elect people that can make decisions that they ultimately feel comfortable with. I would just like the Charter Commission to look seriously at this, and if we're not going to try to, if we're just going to keep things as they are and say, well, this select board and town manager form of government as we have it works perfectly, or we want to stick with it, then we need to make an enormous effort to get people more involved,
Yeah.
which is why some towns have a quorum requirement for town meeting. So this would be like the other extreme. Either we go to some sort of a thing where it's just the system is designed for not as many people to participate, or we put something into our system that forces us to get more people involved. I'd love to see a requirement that maybe, 20%, I think it would be worth it to read through some of these other commission.
Are you suggesting beyond the bullet that's there, and I agree with you, Amherst, and by the way, there's only 2 communities in Massachusetts, there's about 10 that have changed over to town council, or town mayor, council form of government, for some of the reasons you mentioned. Do we want to add the bullet that says not justify, discuss or look at town management form of government versus others?
I think the Charter Commission report should include a commentary on at least why we should keep it the same. They shouldn't just say, oh, we don't want to talk about it.
Mark?
I need to address that. As a member of that committee, having gotten roped into it from John French, who has also had discussions with me, it has gone far beyond what any of us thought it was going to. And we don't have the direction that you're talking about right now.
Direction?
Because John was the one that wanted it, and we just agreed.
Okay, yes, but even so, I've talked with him about it, and we've sat there and talked about some of the different forms of governments. And I don't think, I'm speaking for myself now, I wasn't really expect to have to read how 6 or 8 different towns are running their governments. I thought it was a few simple fixes, and it's not.
No, it's not.
And I would like to invite you, matter of fact, I would really like to invite all of you to come to our next meeting to give us some of that direction.
I don't think we should have done the Charter Commission because I didn't feel that it's a huge amount of work.
Now.
We didn't have enough. No, I mean, you guys can still, I believe, decide that this is not what anybody, it takes a huge amount of time, and I don't feel that we had I didn't feel we had the resources at the time to dedicate
we don't.
to doing it the right way.
It's in motion now.
Bottom line is we have a charter commission. It's been elected and appointed. It's done. So the point is, and they've been requested us to provide our input, whatever it might be, and there's a few bullets here. Do we want to add, I agree with, by the way, the quorum when you've added, I think that's great. I think that we've got to find ways of getting more people involved in this town and force it somehow, because it's not getting better, it's getting worse.
Maybe one thing you could recommend to them, in one of the communities that Allison sent information through on, I don't know what they ultimately decided, I don't remember, but that was kind of besides the point. It was the process that I thought was really interesting. They did a lot of pretty in-depth community engagement to try to figure out what people actually wanted.
Or educate them.
And to educate them and figure out what it was they liked, what it was they wanted. And
that's the big problem is education, because I agree, or I thought I heard Allison say too, that people don't know the difference between, they really want to get into it, between town management form of government and the city council.
And I don't think the statutory requirements of like a public meeting where people come and they're talked at is going to get to it. I think that it needs to be a little more active and involved. And
I would agree.
That's a great role for the Charter Commission to play, because they can go out and figure ways to talk to people and engage them.
We should also allow them to be honest that if they didn't, if they want input, then great, but if they sort of signed up for something that now it's like, well, this is a little bit more than I wanted to get into. That is totally understandable, and I think we should go through the process of, really one of their first questions is there a need for the Charter Commission to exist? Does that group of people that we elected, do they feel that they need to do anything?
I think
it's not what I
have had one of them come to me and say, I'm not sure that, what our purposes and
Right.
if we need to be doing what we're doing.
Right.
So
That's just-
they're confused about,
Well, they are, but I think
they
there's.
know a little bit more now they've gone through
Yeah,
it.
but I think it comes down to I think Mark made the point, and I think it's part of one meeting I attended was, are we viewing this thing from 30,000 feet, or are we getting really into the weeds of it? The weeds of it would be, in my mind, the form of government and all these very heady issues.
That's not the weeds, that's the
root.
that's the central
That's the
question.
root. I didn't mean it to be, yeah, you're right, the wrong term. It's the absolute root of the whole document. And whether to get into that versus where they're going, where they're heading, from my limited engagement, was reviewing paragraph by paragraph to see whether there are any substantive changes to definitions or wording that could be updated to 2019 language. That's where it's really heading.
And the problem is if we had been honest with ourselves, that isn't the role of a charter commission. It's just not. The role of a charter commission is to look at these really big items. None of these little things actually require a charter commission. That's what the Maine Municipal Association training will tell you. But we could also say we're just asking this group of people to just look at some little issues. But I don't think I really want to go to the idea of forcing to have the quorum discussion without having the other alternative discussion. I don't know, just to.
You could do that.
I think it's what they want to do. If they want to look at some of these bigger issues, I think they should have our blessing and encouragement to do that. But if they don't have time for it,
That's fine.
God, I mean, I understand. I don't have time.
I do
either.
too. I didn't want this thing to go for 10 years. We don't intend to. But if they want to look at this, this quorum guidelines, one as an example you're using, and say, we aren't going down that track, that's their decision, not ours.
Yeah. Have they talked at all about the idea of does a city council make more sense, or is there a hybrid model out there?
I believe from the first meeting that I attended when they started right into the document, the first document is the form of government, kind of went right past it because when not attacking that one.
I mean, Bill Kelly did go through all that with them.
Yep. In the very first meeting that I wasn't there.
Very, very first meeting.
Right.
But did they talk at all about whether they whether we should
the discussion kind of went, Bill said, well, these are the different forms of government.
Right.
And very quickly that kind of, everybody, I can't see us changing from what we have.
Right.
And
That's what I've heard also. They're just not going onto that wagon.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and we're not, we're kind of at a place where, again, they've asked us to look at the existing document to make some of these comments or clarifications of whether a select board recall should be there or not, or these kind of key issues that do live with where we are. And that's what we're stuck with. So I think the best we can do here, in my opinion, is to give them this input at some point, add to it, delete from it. But we're not going to recreate the mission of the commission at this point. I don't see it.
Recreate. I mean,
well, we'll refocus it to go back to paragraph 1, exaggerating paragraph 1, which says this is a town management form of government, and we want a report that says why you think that's justified.
It's not even the way it's supposed to work. It's the fact that there isn't a group of people that wants to look at these issues. Or maybe there is. It's just this isn't really the way it was supposed to be done, but. There really isn't a need.
No, that's my point.
Or maybe there is a need for the Charter Commission, but it's just a huge amount of work, and so it's the same problem we have with the rest of our government.
I think what's going to wind up here is a lot of corrections to, some of the stuff that's in it that's antiquated and needs to be corrected. Some of them are mentioned here. A few substantial items are listed here, and they're going over too. I know they went over the definitions, which are a bit antiquated in the document. So they're really crafting the language more than anything else and correcting the typos.
But I mean, they're looking for some input from you as a group. So if you as a group.
Climate change in there, force us now and forever to have to, some towns have done this where they put in some kind of we've got the fire chief and the different things written in as standing department heads.
Why isn't that bullet on this list?
I told you I wasn't sure if it was done.
Oh, okay, all right. So back to my original question.
Did they make this list or?
No,
did you
no,
make
we did. I started
Bob's
this.
been
I started
bugging
this
us
by
for
putting,
months to-
yeah, I've been talking about this literally for months.
this? Okay, so
And-
these 8 things are your,
No, these are a conglomeration of myself and I think Audra and Allison. I don't think Taylor,
Mine starts at should we require certain meeting notice requirements? Should there be select board
Right.
recall?
the first
Should we
5 are
set guidelines?
came,
Oh,
And
that's-
then the links are more of just
they're
like,
great links, by the way.
I started to feel a little bit inspired by
Yep. Yep.
what really does need a charter commission, though,
Mm-hmm.
is the county.
Oh, yes, the truth.
It's a total disaster.
Yeah.
And that charter is really not advantageous, it's so much worse than ours, and
Back
now
to-
I know how to form a charter commission.
There you go. But now that we have this charter,
a lot
they've
more
asked for these
complicated, the
comments.
county.
We have we'd like to get this to them before the January 12th meeting, so.
Number 14.
Oh, I thought it was January, you said.
misspoke.
Oh, I'll get even. Okay, but December 12th. So we should, no reason why we can't decide by December 3rd to have a final list of our suggested topics to send to the commission. If anybody, any one of us has additional comments, bullets they want to put in there, it's on the, what do we call it, the shared drive? And yeah, it was a little tricky. I don't think I titled it really well, but we can change that.
You can just resend the email with.
Yeah, why don't we, would you do that, Audra? Just send it out to all of us and say, comment or forever keep your peace.
Will you
All right.
include these 8
I will
bullet
never
points?
agree to that.
I'm going to send that document to all of you. I'm going to share that document with all of you so you can all write it.
Right to change my mind.
Of course you do, of course you do. All right, so that will do, and we'll get it on the agenda for
Guidelines, yeah.
finalization of the 3rd before the 12th meeting with the Charter Commission.
I'll include the editorial
That's great, I
too.
love that.
For the meeting, I
That's
left.
great, that's
It
phenomenal.
was quite funny.
I mean, it's so poignant.
There's other stuff too that's funny, like
I mean,
in that same one about Camden saying, Camden residents who have lived here a few years remember the vocal zoning in town meetings when voters warned of pending changes in the town's character. The hue and cry from many was, "We'll end up like Bar Harbor," or "Nobody wants a Bar Harbor here." Times change and so do certain local attitudes. Bar Harbor is Bar Harbor with few changes. Camden has changed, and those changes have been noticed by others out of town as well as those in town. A candidate for selectman in Tennant's Harbor was quoted as saying last week, "Everyone wants Tennant's Harbor the way it is now. Nobody wants a Camden here."
All right.
The more they stay the same.
So we'll put that on the agenda for the 3rd. On to the schedule for select board meetings for 2020. Do we have any comments on the suggested dates? Go ahead.
I do. Look at the calendar, I recommended some changes last year that I think might be worth thinking. Right now, our meeting in February is the 18th after the 17th, and that is usually winter break for schools. And a lot of people use that as a vacation week in town.
Like you expect more people to come to the meeting.
Right, we wouldn't want to prevent them from attending one of our meetings.
I'm
It's-
trying to, and
The
the same
massive
thing happens
attendance.
in April. I think that week is, the week of the 19th is spring break. Now, there are going to be some changes, I think, with the schools this year.
Maybe I would like to go away.
But I think we should stay away from, really big vacation weeks for people because a lot of people are out of town. We're just speaking about keeping people engaged. It's best not to have meetings when they're not engaged. Other than that, I think,
Forward to go on vacation these days?
No, they just hang around and
I just
snowball.
think some
I guess my
can.
only comment to that comment is, and I agree with it, but the problem is,
we
the
made
problem,
that change
well,
last
the
year.
problem, yeah, I
Healthier
know,
and
but we
healthier.
had weeks to change it. If we make a change to the months you're talking about, we're going to have 2 weeks in a row of select board meetings.
I don't know, it's more, to me, the central question is more, would we want to go away during that time?
I went through the schedule beforehand. I'm good with them all, but.
I usually
I'm
just
open
let
to-
everybody else decide. Whatever you guys decide is okay.
too.
I'll have to move
I
3
just
for work,
prefer
but
not to
that's
see
easy.
2 meetings in a row. For example, if we wanted to change something like March meetings, that's kind of easy to do because it's a 5-week month.
Right.
There's another couple others we have like that, but if you start changing for vacations and move it to the February 18th to the 25th, and I got 2 weeks in a row, I just think that you're cramming too much in a 10-foot 10-pound bag.
Just a suggestion.
Actually,
understand.
the real question we should have, now that we have the ability to do this,
What's that?
we should coordinate with the school system and with the community and decide if it makes sense to have our annual town meeting when we've scheduled it for.
Is that on this list?
Yeah, down near the bottom.
Really?
June 10th.
Annual town meeting,
I
June
see
10th,
that.
2020.
What day is that, do you know?
I'm sure it's a Wednesday.
Okay.
Tuesday.
It's a
What?
Wednesday.
Oh, wait.
It's a Wednesday,
Oh,
so it's the
Wednesday.
day after
The
elections.
9th, annual
Must
town
be
meeting, the
10th.
10th.
So that's the way we've always done it, according to our old charter, but then
We have the option of changing that now.
That
right?
was my whole point, yeah.
When do you want to change it to?
I think that we should go through a process where we talk to the school district. In the past, we've told them, because I guarantee you, they have awards night scheduled for that.
That night?
I don't know if it's awards night this year, but it's something. That's a really busy week for the school because it's the last week, and so they're doing, every day there's events
All right.
and, so I think we should maybe even write something publicly. Maybe I'll write something on Facebook and ask for input, and we should reach out and at least not make it a direct conflict with something like crucial, but talk about what I just.
In this particular situation, it's one I disagree with because I think, different people can have different, and schools can, but this always ties in for history, has tied into the day after the elections when people are supposedly, hopefully paying most attention to the issues. And it's how I feel about it. And I feel
Historically, it's actually not been like that, but.
it should not change because of that, because one school or another has some event going on, which I'm sorry doesn't take precedence over town meeting. And I think it always ties in it's always tied into the election. I think that's really important because that's when people are mostly focused. The people that are going to pay attention are mostly focused. If we move it to another time and they lose the perspective, they lose the attention focused on elections, we may lose more people than we gain.
Well, it used to be Saturdays in Camden.
Right.
It-
How long
it-
ago?
Well, we should have to go, let's look at the charter. It'll probably say when
Can we?
it used to be, we can hold it at the
Can we
school.
get past one hurdle at a time in terms of back to
Let's
the
just
select
table
board
that
schedule?
portion of it.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering, I did have one comment on the schedule. Select
Oh,
board.
yeah, great.
And it just since I opened my mouth about not having 2 meetings in a row, we have that in November, December. On the 24th of November, we have the week of Thanksgiving, we have a meeting on the 24th, and the following week on December 1st, we have another meeting.
Why in November are we the 10th and 24th instead of the 3rd and 17th?
that's-
Do we know?
There's no reason, because we have we could move November to 3 and 17.
Stand by.
Do we know why it's on the 10th and 24th?
Oh, November 3rd is election day.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
And that's going to be,
well, we can do November 4 and November
we
17.
could do that like we did this year.
Yep.
I think that would be a better
Is that
idea.
okay, Andra?
Yep.
4 and 17?
11 and 11, 17. It does eliminate that conflict.
There's something else I did notice that in June, we also have a meeting on elections night. It's June, so maybe not as big of a deal, but
Where's that meeting?
so June 9th, we have a meeting. That's also the
Oh,
night we vote,
Good
and then
point.
the annual
That was
meeting is
good.
the next day.
yeah, this year, we've done this with the Laren election. We can change that to the Wednesday if you'd prefer. That's
But we
up-
can't because
Can't
that's the
because the
town
town
meeting.
meeting.
Oh, you're right.
So
We don't know.
I guess I'm just stating that if we keep that meeting, we'll be having that meeting while
I think that's
voting is happening.
one really hard to change.
I think
Could
so,
go,
too.
we could go to the 2nd and the 16th. Why are we,
We could do a combo, town meeting and
Could.
select board.
But actually, given May, June, you could do the 2nd and the 16th.
That's tough.
It is?
Both of those are hard for me.
Okay. Let's
Let's
leave,
wait until Jenna's back.
all right.
Good idea.
I mean,
But what's that going to change?
Jenna's input.
I get that, but we've already tabled the annual town meeting date. But I don't understand why we wouldn't just change June to the 2nd and 16th.
I mean, I guess it's just because I'm kind of checked out, and then I just remembered that Jenna might want to have some input, and we might
Would we-
care as a group, since this is something that
we-
we would generally do when everybody's here.
hey, that makes sense. Would we lose you on both those days, 2nd and
Yes.
16th?
Okay. And we don't want to do that. if we can help it.
Then I would leave on the 9th
All
and
right,
the 10th.
leaving the 9th and 10th for now, and make a decision. We'll finalize this when we get the annual town meeting input on the June 10th date. What input are we looking for there now, so that we?
So the only change would be November 4th and November
So far,
17th.
Yep, yep. And what are we going to do about this annual town meeting? What's the action there? Going to have Audra look at the school thing? Is that what we're doing?
I thought maybe we could wait until Jenna was back to finalize all of this. Actually have a discussion, and maybe we can just have some public input on whether we should have it at the normal time or whether there's a better time.
And in the meantime, have them research the school events and such?
I don't know. I think what we know what we'll do.
I'll look at it right now. There's always a conflict.
What we'll do is to accomplish both. We're not going to publish it till we approve it. So all right, let's bring it to the 3rd. We can do that. And all we know is we have to change 11/4, 11/17 right now. All right.
Sure.
That work?
Yep.
So we're tabling everything else except for the November dates.
Yeah, just November dates. The only decision is made is 11/4, 11/17 will be revised, but any other revisions will finalize on December 3rd. Okay. The last item on the agenda was there is a financial in the through October, I believe, in the package. Were there any questions or updates, comments from anybody? I mean, as I looked at it, tracking pretty darn well.
Yes.
I didn't see any significant aberrations on the year-to-date numbers. But if you still have any questions, you don't have to finalize them now. If you get a chance to take a look, we can always bring them up later. Jody had a couple of comments in there she wanted to clarify because of some accounting things. I presume you read those.
Those are just for notes at the beginning, right?
Yeah, she's just trying to, it's kind of an exceptions report, Taylor. It says, is there anything you might, if we were smart enough, and I'm not, to catch those things, she was just trying to, forewarn us about what's going on with for example, the police salaries thing, which makes sense. But in general, for, 33% of the year, everything's right on track.
Yes.
Any comments, Audra?
Nope.
With that,
Were we going to discuss at all the
go ahead.
arrangement with Midco Solid Waste and what happened to that?
You can't, could have a friend. I guess we didn't. We could still do
That was I thought that was an agenda item with, you had said, you told the Midco Solid Waste Board we were discussing it as a select board.
Yeah. That's correct. We didn't get it on there, Audra. Well, maybe we should move to add an agenda item that takes 3/4 vote of us. The agenda item would be to discuss
It
Camden's.
can just be an add-on to her manager's report. We can comment if we want. It doesn't have to be.
Is it on?
Yeah, I'm happy to bring that up. So,
Okay, that's
so
fine.
it was,
Try to make it easy.
all right, manager's report, everyone.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, boss.
it was discussed at the last Midco Solid Waste board meeting that we might want to think more about our arrangement between the town of Camden and Midco Solid Waste with bookkeeping. So currently, Midco Solid Waste pays the town of Camden $10,000 for bookkeeping services, and Jody performs those. So that includes payroll, that includes accounts payable. But it's kind of grown a little bit past that. Jody provides a lot of support with the budget. There's other sort of general
HR, wages, questions, personnel policy.
Responding to
Yes.
audit information.
Audit
Yep.
information.
Coordinating the audit, providing information to the auditors.
Must be several hours a week.
Commentary on best practices.
Oh,
It's kind of bled into, bookkeeping should be a pretty contained and simple function, but I think, the longer that this has been going on and the more that Jody's there and the more that, she's taking on more responsibilities akin to what a finance director would do. Not always, like there's some, there is a difference between what she does for the town and what she does for Midco Solid Waste.
Yes.
But
I'd
it's
say
very hard to discern sometimes.
It is above and beyond what a normal bookkeeper would do.
One of the underlying reasons for this, just one, is the accounting system. Right now, Midco Solid Waste does its accounting over there on QuickBooks.
Yes.
Then the entries from QuickBooks have to be brought over here to be entered into Trio. So right there, you've got a complication. You're doing, no accounting for an entity should be done in pieces. It doesn't make sense. It never has, it never will, especially with software today. So that's one of the things. But then to what Allison mentioned and Audra mentioned, yeah, it's the auditing comments, and because there isn't, at this point in time, any financial, being fair to people, any financial person at Midco Solid Waste. I'm a person
Right,
with
I mean, it's
substantial.
part of the manager's job description,
Responsibility,
but
right.
it's,
Right, and at $10,000 a year, if you start dividing it into what we would charge for a person like Jody or Jeremy or whatever, it's not many hours.
I mean, just to give you a little bit of context, so the library, they are less than half the budget of Midco Solid Waste. So, Midco Solid Waste is 2.1 million, the library's under $1 million, a little under $1 million.
Yeah.
The library for bookkeeping, they pay about $15,000 a year, and for $15,000, and for HR, which would encompass a lot of what Jody is also providing to Midco Solid Waste, that's another $5,000. So right there, you have the library, half the budget,
Double the fee.
paying double, double what we're charging
One
Midco
of the
Solid
questions
Waste.
I have is how does this affect Jody's time to do her work for the town?
I mean, Jody's built it in so that she can, it's not a matter of time for her.
Okay.
I mean, but it
It is,
is
I think it
taking
is.
more and more time, and it's not always
I think it is.
predictable. When there's something that comes up, or especially when Midco Solid Waste changes employees and things have to be explained, or.
I mean, I'd say the
does end up
biggest
taking more
variability
time.
comes with if there's a personnel issue.
Yeah.
Because by nature of how entwined finance is with HR,
Yes.
it's hard for them to, there's not a lot of separation between those two things.
I think globally and to date, from my perspective, being on the board of the Midco Solid Waste, it's gone through some transition, in fairness to them too. But what that's caused is, from my perspective, as a select board member, is the town of Camden is putting way too much time into managing this entity. It isn't just Jody, it's also Audra. Now, by the way, that was necessary for a while there. I get all that. But to me, looking at an organization as Camden, if Jody has $20,000 worth of time available, I could find some things for her to work on. I mean, example, what if, I'm exaggerating to make a point here, please, but what if we wanted to have her, with her great capabilities, to spend a lot more time developing this interactive model on capital expenditures? You've done it to date, but it could be a lot more. If I have that kind of, if we have that kind of time, those are the challenges I would
Sort of
put.
financial assistance program for people.
Yeah, Marco.
I have a
Trust
question.
funds.
So what's the discussion? What are the recommendations? Are we asking them for more money, or are we asking for them to find somebody to replace Jody? What's the question?
That's going to be odd. I mean,
that is, I'm sorry?
I think that really we should be careful about having it be too much of a select board
True.
conversation. I think it's more just this is a heads up. If Audra may feel the need to, I think it's kind of an internal staff organizing issue where she
Operations.
would be looking at that and seeing, okay, does it make sense for us to say, well, this, we might have to charge them more, or maybe it doesn't make sense for us to do it at all, or maybe it should just stay the same and that's the cost of doing business. But I would see it as Audra's.
I would say just from, preliminarily, we are charging way too little for bookkeeping services.
I agree. As an absolute minimum, I would have to agree with your operational, and I believe it is operational, at least more than doubling the cost.
Right. I would say that we should at least double the cost.
More than double.
And then
If we stay in
if
this
they
HR
decide they
side.
don't want to stay with us, they can look for other options. If they do, we'll see how we go over the next year or so. I think that there's also some parameters that we should put on, the line between bookkeeping and some of the other services that we've bled into.
I mean, there's actually, my understanding is that there's no defined
Scope of work.
contract.
Scope of work, that's
Right.
correct.
So,
It's called,
So, yeah.
it's called accounting, and
And I would imagine they would want that too. If they're
Right.
going to pay over double what they're
Totally.
currently paying, they're probably going to want some sort of formalized
I
agreement.
totally agree with that. I think it should be a scope of work, including description. It should be, as a minimum, double, and I'm not sure it's enough if you're doing the HR stuff. You decide. But, yeah, I think scope of work and that kind of thing, if we decide, and if they don't want to, that's their decision as an entity. That's fine. My only caution to you is, I just think there's a lot of hours she's spending on an outside entity that I believe could be better utilized by Camden. That's my opinion.
right, I mean, especially since Camden pays a portion of the
Yeah.
the
yeah.
budget that over there
Yeah.
includes,
Yeah.
you know, a professional manager and.
Well, I mean, I think any organization should be managing itself. It shouldn't be relying on
It's
on
a
member
toxic
entities.
relationship a little
Well,
bit. Not always. Sometimes it's really great, but
The
it's,
solid waste board talked at all about other alternatives yet, or are they kind of
no,
waiting to
I
see?
only dropped it on them last time as a forewarning because we're in the budget process right now and said on November 19th, I guess my wrong date, that we were going to discuss this at the select board, and Camden may or may not want to proceed and know what basis we would discuss. And of course, that caused a flurry of activity because we're not trying to stiff them. We're just trying to be forewarning for the budget process, which wouldn't be effective until next July 1st, of course.
so they've got a lot of time.
That we have a lot of time to play with it, but I just philosophically, as I sit here on this board, my responsibility seems to me fiduciary is to make sure this town gets what it deserves. Now, we're being paid for that, I get that, but part of that $20-something thousand is coming from Camden voters.
Yeah. I tend to agree with the first part of what you just said. Like, it feels like we're constantly having this discussion about staff time and being careful with staff time because staff time is valuable. And I'm not saying it to make a point. It's just it's a real fact. For me, having Jody be able to focus on, and I don't even know what those other things might be, but just knowing that Jody might have 5 hours this week where she can devote to something else is worth to me more than $20,000.
Yeah, I would totally agree. She's, thanks to Audra, a very valuable addition to our staff here and has got things really well controlled and never complains.
Agreed.
She's great, but I just.
This wasn't Jody complaining.
No,
This was
not at
us being
all.
like,
No.
whoa, what are you?
Well, and I do, I mean, to be quite honest, I think there is a little bit of fear that,
Be tactful.
well, yeah, I mean, of course. I think there's a little bit of fear amongst staff in the finance office that the bookkeeping function could go away to somebody else, could be,
Whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, it goes away to somebody else, and then there's an issue, and then it comes back to them in a poor condition. And after all the work that's been put into getting it to a point where it's very efficiently
My understanding
done.
is that.
Yeah.
But,
How long have we been responsible for it for?
I mean,
Long time?
it's been a while.
Like, or maybe it was more like
Decades.
2002.
It's been
There's a
decades.
file in the office there that talks about how it's just going to be temporary until Midco Solid Waste got this fancy software.
QuickBooks?
in the
Maybe.
90s.
I'll have to look back on what that software was.
Well, and to me, fundamentally, it's a question of when is this organization going to manage itself?
Right.
Well, based on what Allison just said, it feels like it became a crutch.
Well, I mean, honestly, a number of people have said to me, oh, God, don't let Camden not do this because it'll get all mixed up again. And that's not a good reason. We're going to bail out.
No, I'm not saying it's necessarily a good reason, but it's a real fear that
Yeah, I get
somebody
that.
like Marlene's lived through. So.
I can understand that because when you have books that are not quite what they should be, it's a real bear.
Right, and I guess it was like a real effort to untangle things. So I think that's the fear
Because we didn't have good enough quality, like if you have and this was back before I was involved, so I'm not speaking to about any specific manager. I think there wasn't one. It was just the board and the exec, the four-town managers kind of all getting together. So there wasn't that professional manager position.
No.
And then Camden has sort of continuously, and sometimes the other towns too, come in with their managers to combine with our finance department, and they've propped all that up.
They did.
But when you have a good, a manager and the management department and the finance department, it's like you can't have, if you have a not good management, then that comes out even, there's no way for a good outside bookkeeper to turn
That's a good
a
point.
poorly managed organization into a books perfectly in order.
And remember, to me, fundamentally, if you have an organization that has that issue going on, the cost to keep it accounting-wise online costs more, right? So the challenge would be, if I think, recommend that you come up with, if we were to continue, what would the price be? What would the reasonable, considering all the things that we are currently doing, all, and list those by bullet as to what we're doing right now for future discussion. Fair?
Yeah, however she wants
I
to
mean,
do it.
then we can make a decision whether or not we want to continue at it or not. I mean, we need to address it. I love Camden being nice guys and girls, but we got to be smart too.
Right, I mean, it wasn't even until, I've been involved in Midco Solid Waste for
10
quite a,
years?
no, it hasn't been that long,
No?
but 10, no. I haven't even been like, had town government on my radar for more than like 4.5 or 5.
Really?
I mean, maybe 5.
Wow.
But, yeah, it's just like all the rest of the people that live in Camden. But it was just, I mean, really, it's.
That's true.
But until, it was 2 years ago or a year now that I realized that Jody wasn't the finance director for, I mean,
Midco
it took
Solid
me being
Waste.
the treasurer of Midco Solid Waste and having a couple of meetings, all of a sudden to be like, hold on, you're not also the finance director at Midco Solid Waste? And she's like, no, I'm just a bookkeeper. Like, what's the difference? Like, what? And I'm still trying to sort out why the auditor has all of his conversations with Jody. It's like,
Well, then
I don't think
they have
anybody
a-
knows.
They have a
what-
board meeting tomorrow night, and I think the comment should just be that we're evaluating it. We're still evaluating it. Is that fair, Audra? We'll take a look at it and
Yep.
play it smart, then we can decide later.
We have to do that no matter what, because
Yep.
Midco Solid Waste, if they, if they're wanting to look at different things, then I'm on the finance committee of Midco Solid Waste. And so we would have to look at what we would put out to bid somewhere else. And at this point, we actually don't know what the scope of work is.
That's where it'll help to have the list from Jody and Marlene as to what we all
You do.
are being sucked into doing right now. Because you bid that out, I can tell you what the price is going to be.
Sounds like it just kind of evolved over time and never really got hashed out.
It's kind of, if it doesn't feel broke, don't fix it until it starts feeling broke. And it's starting to feel broke.
Right, and she's a really useful resource, so
Oh.
it becomes easy for
Oh, yeah.
somebody to just pick up the phone and be like, I bet Jody knows. I bet Jody knows.
Yep.
What's the law with
Yep.
unions and this and that, and it's
That's
just,
the bleed that you're worried about.
Well, when you get into, we've all been through audit reports. They're not the easiest things in the world to read. So you're going to have a lot of questions if you don't have a financial background. And that's where Jody's gotten pulled into for the audit of Midco Solid Waste. And that's just, common. That, the HR thing, the bookkeeping itself, I don't think that's been the big bugaboo.
No, and I mean, that's like a very sort of automated almost.
It is, it's kind of.
minus the QuickBooks
Well,
treatment.
yeah, well, minus the QuickBooks is the information there. Unfortunately, QuickBooks doesn't speak to Trio, which is unfortunate. But so they're doing a lot of data entry, debit credit, whatever. That's kind of black and white. But the rest of it, no,
Yeah, it's,
not even close. All right, that's what we'll do. We'll take it forward and maybe discuss it in December again.
Sounds
at
good.
whatever meeting is appropriate.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All's in favor? I didn't even ask for discussion. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.